Hello and welcome to Six Part. Today I'm gonna start a new series. What if Deku unlocked the Sharingan? Part 1. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
Izuku Midoriya sat quietly with his legs hanging far above the floor in front of his family computer. Despite the chaos, devastation, and blood, including his own, he repeatedly watched as All Might, his hero, pulled dozens of people out of the flaming wreckage and rubble while laughing. Even the most ruthless villains would have reconsidered their life decisions after watching this video this morning, which would have made Izuku smile the most. Unfortunately, though, men are not all made equal. Inko Midoriya was pacing around behind him, occupied with something, anything, Izuku could hear. He was aware of her sympathy for her son. I even felt sorry for him. However, because she was his mother, he knew that she would be the first to console him when he needed it. "Mom!" he exclaimed, his voice faltering from unshed tears. He always smiles when he saves you, no matter how bad it is. Despite his brave attempt at a smile, Izuku turned slowly to face his mother and said, "I want to be a cool hero like that." The tears finally fell like rain. Without any hesitation, his mother rushed to him, embracing her child tightly and crying pitifully, "Izuku. It's coming. Mom will improve everything. As usual, I mean, who cares if I'm quirkless?" Inko screamed, "I'm sorry, Izuku," as she tightened her hold on him. Izuku felt as though time had stopped, as though the fourth dimension itself wished to keep him stuck in that terrible moment indefinitely. "I want to save people, Mom. Please tell me that I can." Tragically oblivious to the flash of red beneath her child's tearful gaze, Inko simply held her son even closer, her eyes still tightly closed, oblivious to the trauma that was currently gnawing away at him. After 10 years, Izuku's body was hollow and numb to the outside world as he walked home, looking down at his feet. In fact, the situation was almost comical. In one day, he was violated by a sludge villain, had his notebook destroyed, was eviscerated by Kachan in front of the entire class, and discovered that his hero, All Might, was fighting crime on borrowed time. In addition, he informed Izuku that he was incapable of being a hero. He came to a halt on the pavement and smiled sadly at nobody. "It's funny. He's right that being a hero would be extremely difficult if you were quirkless, but it hurts much more to have it come from him than I anticipated." Izuku felt tears welling up in his eyes and clutched his chest. "I'm not sure if I want to scream or cry more." Then he heard a cry that rang in his ears. Oh, indeed, exactly like that. The sound of a strong explosion around the corner then made Izuku's bones tremble. People were already leaving the scene, as he could see. He even saw Kamui Woods swinging toward the source of the explosion. He noticed a small group of people circling a disturbance as he looked down the road. In addition, he saw pro-heroes like Death Arms and Mount Lady joining Kamui Woods in an attempt to either deal with the chaos or calm down the crowd. His skin turned white when he realized that the sludge villain was at the center of everything. How can that be? He was taken by All Might and placed in his pocket. Izuku then recalled the commotion that occurred when he grabbed the number one hero and the clumsy motions that could have easily removed a bottle that was not securely fastened. That's when he fell out. "This implies that I am to blame," a stranger in the crowd said. "Apparently the villain's got a middle schooler trapped right now." "How? What are the heroes not doing? I thought All Might was dealing with this villain." "Where'd he go?" asked another pedestrian. "All Might's here." "Where is he?" "Oh no, I'm also to blame for All Might's inability to assist at this time. The villain would never have escaped and All Might would still have time to remain in his muscular form if I hadn't been such a moron back then. Why am I so useless, damn it?" Izuku then noticed the hostage held by the sludge villain. Kachan. Before he knew it, he was running directly toward the villain after breaking through the barricade of Death Arm and the police. He heard cries of shock and surprise, but his racing thoughts failed to process anything. Death Arms yelled at him, "Get back here, you idiot!" But the adolescent was currently out of control. As the child he had previously reprimanded made a frantic run for the villain wreaking havoc, a skeletal man with blonde hair watched from the crowd. "What the hell? It's that kid from earlier. Does he have some sort of a death wish?" The villain remembered when he saw the new 14-year-old. Through the pain, Bakugo could make out a shape in vague detail, but he recognized the lanky figure and puffy hair right away. Weakly, he whispered, "Deku?" Though Izuku's mind was currently moving at the speed of light, his eyes were fixed on those terrified eyes. Ironically, Izuku had first-hand experience with the look due to the person who currently wore it. Something that Izuku had long believed dead was rekindled when he saw the look of complete terror on the face of his childhood friend who had turned into a bully. I want to save lives. For Izuku, time seemed to slow down, as though the sludge villain were submerged in water or something. Izuku quickly identified the villain's weak point and devised an attack strategy without even considering the situation. With all his strength, he threw his backpack at the villain's eye, hitting it exactly right. Then, like a man possessed, he started to claw at the slime that surrounded his classmate. Bakugo snarled, "Deku? What are you doing?" "I just couldn't do nothing," Izuku said, flashing a scared smile at his old friend. As he forced Bakugo to detonate multiple explosions to drive his attacker away, the villain roared, "Would you do me a favor and just die?" Then, determined to crush the teenager into a different, more gory kind of sludge, the villain swung at Izuku with an especially long tendril. But Izuku caught another glimpse of the villain's slow-motion movements. It seemed as though his already rapid brain was processing all the visual information at his disposal even more quickly than it would normally be able to. What's happening? Izuku was therefore in the jumping position while the villain was getting ready to use Bakugo's explosions. Izuku was already crouching beneath the trajectory of the tendril as he started to swing it. The next few attacks will be no different. Izuku realized more and more that the villain was a fairly predictable fighter, even with the strength and gross factor of his quirk. He's becoming careless. He uses Kachan's quirk to keep me away, but perhaps I can take advantage of that. I'll have an opening if this attack pattern continues. Now, Izuku leapt over a tendril and ran directly toward Bakugo. Even though Izuku could hear the police and pro-heroes shouting at him once more, he felt relieved for the first time in his life. All Might observed the action. Damn it, this quirkless kid, why am I so worthless at the moment? Then Izuku's skin turned white and All Might noticed his eyes. Hold on a second. The villain raised Bakugo's arm and got ready to shoot, saying, "Haven't you learned your lesson? You can't get near me?" Despite his pain, Bakugo watched Izuku act and said, "What are you doing, idiot? You have a death wish? Why doesn't he simply flee? If I grab his wrists, I can easily leverage them because the shoulder is the most important place to change an arm's direction." Izuku grabbed Bakugo's wrists and ducked under the first wave of explosions, which exploded precisely where he expected them to. He then used all of his strength to push them upward just in time for the second wave of explosions, which went off directly into the villain's eyes rather than at Izuku. Izuku was able to drag Bakugo away from the slime and to the wall across from the villain during that moment of confusion. He had the biggest smile on his face, but his heart was pounding and he wasn't sure how his pants were doing. "Don't worry, Kachan. Everything's gonna be okay now." Bakugo was too tired and barely conscious to say more than, "Run, you damn nerd." "Enough of this." The villain roared, his eyes closed from the damage, spinning wildly and launching an incredible onslaught of tendrils in all directions at breakneck speed. Izuku tried to move, but every move he made him feel more and more in danger. Despite his insight, it was evident that Bakugo's lack of mobility and the villain's sheer physical prowess effectively eliminated all alternatives. Compared to earlier, these are much faster. I know where to go and I can see them coming, but my body isn't moving quickly enough. I'm sorry, Mom. Izuku braced himself for the worst and covered Bakugo's body with his own. I really am pathetic. I really need to practice what I preach. Izuku's eyes popped open, and he slowly turned around as a wave of relief swept over him. With the back of his shirt dripping with what was likely the slime he protected the teenagers from, the tall figure of All Might gazed back at him with a smile as broad as he had ever seen. All Might then unleashed the mother of all uppercuts, splattering the sludge villain, putting out the majority of the fires, and causing a freaking rainstorm. "Apologies for taking so long, but have no fear." "Why?" "Because I am here," All said. "Holy shit. He changed the weather with one punch," exclaimed a fan as the audience cheered in triumph. Izuku felt a wave of exhaustion hit him as adrenaline left his body, and his eyes welled up with relief that was almost painful. He rubbed his eyes and stammered, All Might, thank you. Despite his injury and exhaustion, he came to our rescue. He's awesome." The teens were given a smile by the symbol of peace, who said, "Don't worry about it, kid. Happy to help. I must leave before the reporters harass me. As it is, I've already reached my limit." "You two all right?" All Might asked himself, turning from the slime splatter to the teenagers he had just rescued. While pro-heroes and paramedics tended to the children, All Might focused particularly on the green-haired child. "I am aware of what I observed. It appears that I should speak with him." Izuku made the decision to return home, His path led by the evening sunset, after being severely reprimanded by Death Arms in Kamui Woods for becoming involved, while Slugger and the police were essentially swooning over Bakugo. He was so preoccupied with his own thoughts and the sound of his trudges that he didn't hear anyone running until they yelled, "Deku!" Startled by the unexpected arrival, Izuku spun around and said, "Kei-Kachan?" Bakugo clenched his fist in anger. "Don't think I needed your help or anything today. I had that slime prick right where I wanted him. Far as I'm concerned, you're still a useless Deku. So, don't go thinking this changes anything." After that, Bakugo turned and bounded away, leaving Midoriya in a state of confusion. What was the purpose of that? Izuku smiled sadly. Kachan will always be Kachan, I suppose. Izuku turned and rubbed his eyes, but he shrieked as a huge figure rushed out of the nearby alley and exclaimed, "I am here, young Midoriya." Izuku squeaked, his heart still pounding from the shock. All Might? I thought you got hounded by the press. What are you doing here?" Haha. Escaping those journalists was nothing at all. Why? Because the hero exclaimed, bursting into laughter. All Might spat out an inconceivably large amount of blood as he shrank to his actual size, encased in a cloak of steam. Izuku's already irritated eyes and naturally overactive tear ducts threatened to unleash a biblical-sized flood as he screamed, "Oh my god," once more. "Sorry about that. Anyways, I wanted to talk to you about your actions back there," said All Might, wiping his mouth and clearing his throat. "I know. I am sorry I caused so much trouble. I don't know what happened. It was like," Izuku said, looking down at his feet as tears started to well up. "Your body moved without thinking, right? Why yay." Izuku nodded as his head shot up to his idol. The mighty nodded and continued, "You know, all the greatest heroes showed signs as children that they were destined to be pillars in society. And all of them share the same thing in common. They all acted without thinking about themselves. That's self-sacrifice. You get what I'm saying?" Izuku nodded once more, each word quickening his heartbeat. What is he saying, exactly? All Might took a deep breath and kept going. "Kid, I told you that you couldn't be a hero. Yet, not an hour later, you're the only one to charge right into a villain to save someone else. And not only that, you put up a hell of a fight. And even beyond that, you inspired me to go beyond." Tears threatened to fall, but they were not tears of despair or sadness for once. Izuku recalled what his mother, teachers, and classmates had said. Everyone who told him he couldn't pursue his dreams. What he must have been. "Kid, you can be a hero. These waterworks could not be stopped." His heart was literally overflowing. Izuku, Deku, Midoriya, his idol and the greatest hero in the world, had just told him that he could become a hero. At last. Someone has faith in me. Right now, it seems like nothing else matters. All I want is to always remember this moment. His eyes met his hero's, and he grinned broadly. Before realizing what else he wanted to discuss, All Might gave the child a smile and said, "Oh, speaking of which. Kid, I thought you told me you were quirkless." "Huh? You told me you were quirkless, but you clearly have a quirk. What gives?" All Might asked, casting a questioning glance at the boy who was kneeling. "Huh?" Izuku's eyes were wide as he gazed at All Might. All Might hastily pulled out his phone, took a picture, and then showed Izuku the screen. "Don't tell me you didn't know about it. Like here, look." "Huh?" Izuku's once bright green eyes had turned a glowing red in the photo. Furthermore, his pupils seemed to be encircled by a black ring with two symbols that resembled commas evenly spaced apart. His true eyes, meanwhile, came back, the red glow gone. Congratulations. I'm at a loss for words here. It's pretty late to manifest your quirk." "You're what, 11? 12? All Might said, struggling to find the right words. Squeaking, Izuku said, "I'm almost 15. So scrawny." Spit out a waterfall of blood from the symbol of peace. He continued to stare in wonder at the image, barely paying attention to what All Might was saying. "Do I possess a quirk? It makes sense. Quirk theory professors frequently like to compare quirks to muscles, pointing out that transformation and emitter types are frequently triggered by reflex. Though I assumed it was just adrenaline, I noticed that my perception and analysis were much faster than usual. Although I also possessed some insight, which I suppose is just a more advanced form of analysis, I should have recognized that something was wrong during my first villain fight because I was so preoccupied with avoiding death and rescuing Kachan. In relation to Kachan, I wonder if he will no longer refer to me as Deku now that I possess a quirk. However, in relation to that, why did it suddenly appear? And I believe the doctor had told me that because I had the extra joints, I shouldn't have a quirk factor. However, I believe that's just a correlation and not a cause, so perhaps I'm just an anomaly from the norm, which could. Stop. You're giving me an aneurysm, All Might said, momentarily changing and lightly chopping off Izuku's head. Before bowing continuously, Izuku cried, "Ga, I'm so sorry, I didn't know I was saying that out loud, please forgive me." All Might rubbed his temple and sighed. "I chose a strange fanboy. This is a natural part of life. Look kid, there's one more thing I wanted to talk to you about. The fact that you weren't even aware of your quirk when you rushed in to save your friend just makes me more sure about this." Izuku was now even more perplexed. Telling me that I have a quirk is the biggest thing that could happen. I believe you are worthy to inherit my quirk. What? Izuku started muttering frantically as he desperately attempted to decipher All Might's words. The hero sighed and went on, "One for all is my quirk." As though the wind itself understood the importance of what All Might was saying, Izuku's eyes grew wide and he sensed the air becoming thicker. "One for all?" The mighty nodded. "Yes. It's a quirk passed down from person to person, master to student. It's the crystallization of all of our combined strength, stockpiled throughout the generations and focused into one person. Anyways, you know about my injury, yeah?" Izuku, remembering the horrifying scene on that rooftop, gave a silent nod. "Well, since I can't use this power to its fullest, I need to pass it on to the next generation. And who better to be my successor than the not-so-quirkless boy who rushed into the heat of battle before anyone else? Wait. You're offering me your power? I'd be as strong as you?" In response to the boy's stunned look, All Might laughed and said, "Yes, you would be as strong as I am. Stronger, actually. Eventually. Plus, having a quirk might create some interesting effects too." Izuku made an attempt to open his mouth, but only a squeak emerged. His thoughts were going more quickly than he had anticipated. He then experienced a brief itching sensation in his eyes and a tiny ringing sound. "Oh, hey, it's back," said All Might. Izuku gasped, "Huh?" But then heard a lower-pitched ringing tone and felt the itch again. "And it's gone. Weird. Anyways, I don't expect an answer right away, but I accept." Izuku's eyes gleamed with resolve rather than the strength of his quirk. After a moment of looking stunned, All Might smiled and said, "Good answer." As they strolled through the streets of Musutafu, Izuku asked his companion, All Might, where are we going?" The following day, Izuku got a text at lunch telling him to meet All Might after school. He agreed after fanboying about his idol messaging him directly, and as soon as the bell rang, he boarded a train. "Well, I know you must be excited to start training to receive my power, but I think you should learn about your own quirk first. Also, I haven't finished your training plan yet." All Might chuckled, in his true form to avoid drawing attention to himself. "Oh, but where are we going for that? My doctor's office is the other way." All Might nodded. "If he couldn't recognize that you had a quirk then, I doubt he'd be much help. No, we're going to see the world's greatest physician and an expert on quirk physiology. Besides, it's always good to tour your prospective school." "My perspective?" "No," Izuku started to shake with anxiety and anticipation. No, not in a way. Absolutely not." Even after All Might led him to the nurse's office and beyond the Ua gates, this persisted. "Isn't he a little young?" All Might. I got your message. So, this is your successor?" After a brief pause, he nudged his protege and hissed, "Yes, thank you for meeting with us. Introduce yourself." "I'm Izuku Midoriya, MS Youthful Heroine. Recovery girl, ma'am, please." Trying to salvage this initial impression, All Might sighed and said, "Young Midoriya here is actually taking the entrance exam next year." "He's not young, I see. He's simply weak. I understand. Nice to meet you, Sonny. Would like some candy?" Recovery girl asked the boy with a smile, offering him a small handful of gummy bears, which the future hero accepted with gratitude. "Anyways, let's try to figure out your dilemma." After guiding him to a chair, she quickly took his measurements, vital signs, and blood sample. "While that's getting scanned, why don't you try to show me your quirk?" How do I activate a quirk?" Izuku asked, realizing something important after nodding and attempting to turn it on. All Might shouted quickly, "Clench your buttocks and yell," in his muscular form. The now dejected #1 hero nodded and pouted in the corner as Recovery Girl hissed, "Shut up. Anyway, Sonny, just try to reproduce whatever feeling triggered it in the first place. Do you remember what it felt like to use your quirk?" she said. "Yeah, it felt itchy when I turned it on, and I could hear a ringing sound, and then it was like whoosh and everything was slower and I could tell what was going to happen and it like bam. Izuku grinned after giving it some thought. With a fake smile, Recovery Girl took notes in her binder. I'll give him that he's just as strange as All Might. Okay, now try to recall your emotional state when that happened. Got it. My emotional state. Izuku recalled the moment All Might told him he could be a hero or the moment he saw Bakugo in need of a hero and struggling. Then, Izuku's red, two-tomo outlined eyes snapped open. Recovery Girl spent some time on the computer before pointing Izuku and All Might to the screen and grinning, saying, "Well done. Now let me make some notes and I'll pull up the quirk registry and see if I can find any similar cases such as yours." Now, there are only about 10,000 cases of people with late quirk manifestation since we began recording this information. That's a pretty small number of people considering there are over a dozen billion people with quirks in this registry. However, there are over 100 cases where people with late quirk manifestation also had red eyes like yours. All Might said, rubbing his chin. That's pretty rare. The Recovery Girl nodded. That means 1 out every 100 late bloomer has or had a quirk that changed eye color to red. That's incredibly specific. If I had to guess, I'd say your quirk is caused by a recurring mutation. It's almost like convergent evolution. Now, this is Midoriya's maternal family tree from the National Registry. Their quirk history goes back 4 generations. But nobody has a quirk remotely similar to Midoriya, she said, bringing up another page to show her guests. His father, on the other hand, reportedly had an uncle with glowing eyes from heat vision. Recovery Girl closed the page and displayed another family tree, saying, "So that's at least a hint to a hereditary history." "Really? Does that mean I can shoot fire from my eyes?" Izuku asked, his eyes widening. "I'm not entirely sure to be honest. It's not likely, but it's also not impossible," said Recovery Girl with a shrug. The device where Recovery Girl had put the blood sample began beeping at that precise moment. Well, that'd be the analysis. Let's see. All Might said, "What? What is it?" Izuku clutched his academic attire. "Be good news, please. Be good news, please." "Well, you definitely have a quirk factor." Recovery Girl grinned. "That much is certain." Izuku's chest became lighter. Hearing it said aloud, even though I knew I had to because of the picture. However, I always maintain that the prerequisite for being able to mutate a quirk in the first place is the loss of vestigial physiology, such as the toe joint. As for why your doctor couldn't diagnose, I'd say it's because the mutagenic factor affects your eyes and optical nerves exclusively, not any other part of your body. So trying to use a marker, like the toe joint, wouldn't do much good. Recovery Girl then rubbed her chin after doing more research and said, It appears that your quirk factor affects a series of marker genes." Miss Recovery Girl. What does that mean?" Izuku asked after he hesitated. She laughed. "Sorry. Those are genes that every human has. Some other species actually have this one too. But this would explain why there are multiple quirks with similar characteristics popping up under mysterious circumstances. From all the information I have, which really isn't much, I'd say your quirk is the result of a rare, but recurring mutation. I'll see if I can find anyone on that list from earlier that's still alive for comparison's sake." "How do you think One for All would interact with his quirk?" All Might asked after giving it some thought. Izuku blushed, then understood. She would be aware of One for All, of course. Did she not know that I was his heir? She would also be aware of the fact that she most likely treated All Might for his injury. Recovery Girl sighed. "It's hard to guess. I'd say to just use it as often as you can, in a safe and legal setting, of course. Learn its capabilities. Test it out. Push yourself. That's the only way quirks grow. If you break them down, they'll build themselves back up." Speaking of growing, All Might said, developing his muscular physique. "That works for you. Let's start our training tomorrow at 6 a.m. at Dagoba Beach?" "Yes, sir." Izuku nodded angrily, smiling, after saying, "Haha. Now that's what I like to hear. See you tomorrow, young Midoriya." All Might hurried quickly out of the nurse's office. After a moment of being stunned, Izuku muttered, "I don't know how to go home." Izuku pulled a refrigerator with all of his strength on a chilly April morning. As one is inclined to do on a deserted beach at 6 in the morning. "It sure is comfy on this fridge. So peaceful and immobile." All Might ridiculed, sitting like a giant bird on the kitchen appliance. With a final heave, Izuku collapsed on his back, gasping for air. "Why'd I need to pull this refrigerator?" he asked. "To put it simply, you're an insufficient vessel for One for All." What? Why, you said I was worthy. Izuku cried out as All Might made a valiant effort to soothe him. Izuku began to scream as he pictured his arms exploding. Right now, only for now. Your spirit is great, but if you tried to use my quirk as you are, physically, your limbs would explode. All Might slyly took a picture with his phone as he said, that's why we're training. After you complete my aim to pass American Dream Plan, you'll be a proper vessel fit for any quirk. So I'll be as strong as you then? Or stronger since One for All stockpiles power? Izuku asked, nodding in comprehension. Sweat dropping, All Might said, in a way, yes. What does that mean? You'll have my power, but... All Might? Is there something I should know? Izuku asked, beginning to grow anxious. With a heavy perspiration, All Might said, well. You might have some kickback when you use One for All for the first time. Kickback? Izuku was now trying to punch something while visualizing his arms bouncing off his body. There is an equal and opposite response to every action. Don't worry about it, for now, let's just work on getting you into shape and fixing this place up, was All Might's attempt to reassure his pupil. Fixing this place? What's wrong with it? Izuku asked, raising an eyebrow. All Might pointed to the miles of trash lining the shore and said, I did some research. Apparently, this place used to be one of the most beautiful beaches in the country. But now it's little more than a junkyard. Izuku gave an understanding nod. Yay. I heard the currents bring trash from the ocean onto the shore. Then people started dumping stuff here since it was sorta dirty anyways. The mighty nodded. Now, even the locals won't come here. Heroes today are all about fame and glory and riches. But being a hero used to mean helping out the community. And what better way to help out the community than by volunteering service? Izuku cheered, feeling very energized and ready to begin trash hauling once more, but he remembered something and froze. Why the hesitation, young Midoriya? Don't you want to be a real hero? Why, yay, of course, but I had a question. See, I told my mom about my quirk and she told me I should get it registered, but... You don't know how to, do you? Said All Might with a smile. Izuku nodded and cast a sheepish glance down. Don't worry, young Midoriya. Everything will be, All Might, with me here, said All Might, giving him a shoulder clap. Izuku gave that a courteous laugh, but he was secretly wondering if he would ever idolize this man for that pun. But truth be told, you might want to hold off on registering. Your quirk, as it is fairly different from what One for All can do. Going from quirkless gives you the chance to basically put anything on the form that you want, but once you're registered as having heightened perception for a quirk, it'll be difficult to include super strength, speed, and endurance in that. After giving it some thought, Izuku nodded and said, okay, I understand. The mighty replied, but speaking of your quirk, have you found anything interesting about it? Oh yay. I wrote down a bunch of info about it in my notebook. Wanna read it? Izuku said with a bright smile. After giving a nod, All Might was given a severely burned notebook with the title, Hero Analysis for the Future, Volume 13. 13. What a fanboy. He almost passed out from the sheer volume of notes as he turned to the final written entry. Alright, Toshinori, concentrate on what really matters. Izuku Midoriya, I have a quirk, is the subject. Quirk. Not yet known abilities. Improved insight, analytical proficiency, perception, and predictive ability. Enables quick response and planning in the face of physical danger. By observing the target, it also makes it possible to replicate physical movements. Telescoping or microscopic. Vision, unknown range, X-ray vision. Emotional stress is the activation method. Recalling that stress triggers activation, as a result, it takes some time. Notes. Only lasts for about 5 minutes straight before running out of energy. The rate of recharge is unknown. Physical mimicry necessitates intense concentration and is constrained by the subject's own abilities. The iris glows a little when it's active. When employing a special skill, Tomo spins around the pupil. This was all done in one night. Young Midoriya, this is very impressive. I think this will greatly assist Recovery Girl in determining more about your quirk's origin. However, what does replication of physical moves mean to you? Izuku looked down and blushed abruptly, saying, well. The previous evening. Welcome back to Dancing with the Stars. Izuku grinned as the announcer energized the audience for the upcoming performance on the TV. Mistakes were made. Everybody might have perspired. I think I should be doubting myself now, regardless of that. Escapade. The ability to mimic movements has a lot of potential. Like learning a martial art just by observing it. Luckily, Our training regimen includes some calisthenics and aerobics to hopefully increase your ability to perform the moves you copy, but I'm glad to see this enthusiasm. Just the kind of thing I want to see from my successor." Izuku was beaming. "Thanks, All Might. I really appreciate all you're doing for me. This child is going to bring me to tears. Hold on, I'm a genius." "Nonsense. I'm happy to nurture the next generation of heroes, especially when it involves my successor. Really? Actually, I just thought of something else I can do for you," Izuku said. "And no, seriously, All Might. You've done enough for me," while waving his hands in front of his face. "Sharingan. Huh?" All Might clarified. "Your quirk doesn't have a name yet, so I'm giving it one. Copy wheel I. Sharingan." "Sharingan, Izuku asked, smiling. "Sharingan. It sounds great." All Might gave his pupil a smile. "So much wasted time. Come on, young Midoriya. We've got a lot to make up before school," he said, almost throwing up after taking a quick glance at his watch. Izuku Midoriya's training from hell started at that point. After 10 months, All Might adjusted his scarf and locked his truck. He heard a scream as he was making his way to the beach. "A bad guy? Right here? At this hour?" All Might started to run and get ready to change, but he stopped abruptly. There was so little trash and litter that the entire beach practically glistened, and Izuku Midoriya was standing on top of a big pile of trash on the sand's edge, yelling, "No," roaring, to the sky above. He cleaned up outside the area I told him to, and just in time, too. "Oh my goodness," All Might said, speechless. All Might, now completely changed, ran to his apprentice just in time to catch him as he fell. After glancing at his mentor, Izuku muttered, "All Might. I did it." "No, young Midoriya. You did even more that. You thoroughly exceeded my expectations, and now I can say with the utmost certainty that you're a proper vessel. Just look at yourself when we started," All Might said, setting Izuku down and shaking his head with a huge smile. He then took out his phone and displayed a photo he had taken 10 months prior, which showed a scrawny, crying boy lying in the sand. That same boy is now, well, he's not scrawny, but he's still not a man. Even so, he still sheds a lot of tears. However, he is no longer lying in the sand. "Small steps," Izuku said, weary, comparing his muscular body to his former one. "I know I worked for this, but I still feel like I cheated somehow." All Might plucked a hair from his head and said, "Nonsense. There's a monumental difference between being born with a silver spoon and working your butt off for it. Now, the time has come for you to inherit my power." Izuku nodded and grinned, saying, "I'm ready. At last, all of that effort is beginning to pay off. Now, eat this," was All Might's best way of saying the 3 worst words while holding out his hair. Izuku Midoriya stood, hardly moving, outside the testing center's gates. All of the experiences I've had over the past 10 months have culminated in this moment. Everyone is really just Mom and All Might, but I can't let them down, I suppose. And, of course, Recovery Girl. She's pleasant. I had a purpose. "Move, ya damn nerd. We're gonna be late," said Katsuki Bakugo, a walking interruption, as he attempted to finish his thought. "Kei-Kachan." Izuku flinched instinctively. "Just don't get in my way, got it?" said the huffy blonde as he shook his head and strode by. Izuku sighed and nodded angrily, saying, "Got it, crystal clear. I have never comprehended anything more than your instructio, and he's gone. He still despises me despite everything that happened with the villain last year and all of this time. He no longer bothered me at school, at least." Izuku heard some whispers from other examinees who knew Katsuki from the news stories from the previous year as he ascended the stairs to the testing hall. "However, I suppose that he has also had difficulties." Izuku crossed the gate's threshold, shaking his head to avoid thinking. "Let's get started. My first action is the future symbol of peace in my new life." Then he fell. Simply at random, as one tends to do. "I'm sorry for everything." When he realized he was not moving at all, he braced himself to hit first base with the ground. He actually felt weightless, as if he were suspended in midair. Izuku screamed in shock, "Wah!" which caused the other examinees to laugh condescendingly. From behind him, a warm, almost sweet voice said, "I apologize for using my quirk on you without first asking, but I figured it's bad luck to fall before an exam." Izuku turned around and saw the best dream and worst nightmare of all teenage boys. A teenage girl, in particular, a short one with big brown eyes, a brown bob, and a permanent flush. Oh no, she's pretty. He had to make sure his Sharingan wasn't active because every neuron in his brain started firing so quickly. He attempted to respond by saying anything at all, but human speech had completely failed him. Rather, he made a series of inarticulate, frantic exhalations in an attempt to communicate. After a minute of staring, the girl grinned and said, "Anyway, let me help you down." She grabbed his shoulders and lowered his feet back to the floor. She didn't seem to realize that simply touching this boy had both halted and accelerated his heartbeat. "Release," she said, tapping her fingertips, and Izuku felt gravity pull him back. As swiftly as she entered, she left, saying, "Anyway, good luck in there, I'll see you around." Young Midoriya was both appreciative and heartbroken. But through this difficult experience, he remained sane because of one truth and one certainty. "I just had a conversation with a girl." Izuku's face lit up with a smile that was so radiant it made the first quirk blush. "Do I even need to take the test right now? Nothing, in my opinion, could surpass that." Then he remembered the horrible torment he had gone through to obtain one for all, and his stomach began to churn. Furthermore, he wasn't considering the training. "It wasn't for nothing that I ate that hair. Let's get this done." When Izuku discovered that the seating for orientation was by middle school, any hope he had that this test would go well was dashed. Hey Kachan," Izuku muttered as he sat down beside his erratic classmate. In all honesty, Bakugo's growl of acknowledgement was better than Izuku could have imagined. "Hey there, my young listeners, can I get a YEA?" a loud voice said as the lights went down in the auditorium. The ensuing silence was deafening. "No worries, I'm here to give you the rundown on this here exam, are you ready?" Even more so was this silence. Despite the poor reception, Present Mike persisted, apparently drowning out the sounds of a young otaku fanboy in the stands. "Oh my god. It's Present Mike, I can't believe Satua, thesis." "Shut the hell up, Deku," yelled Bakugo after he had had enough. Some of the students around Izuku laughed when he clamped a hand over his mouth as his face turned red. "I'm already the laughing stock of UA, and I haven't even started classes yet." From the rear of the auditorium came a loud, solemn voice that said, "Excuse me, Present Mike sir." The tall, well-built student who stood up said, "You mentioned 3 villains, but this sheet clearly states that there are 4 types. If this is an error, this is a serious oversight, especially for a school as prestigious as UA." His serious face matched his serious voice. "And you, stop talking so much," he said, turning to face Izuku. "If you think UA is a place where you can goof off while everyone else is trying to learn, then you're better off leaving now." Izuku's face flushed as he attempted to settle into his chair. He thought to himself, "Okay, now I'm the school laughingstock," as he heard other students laughing. After observing what was happening, Bakugo muttered, "Elitist dickhead." Present Mike said, "Thanks for bringing that up, examinee 7111, with a smile, likely at the prospect of finally engaging in some fan interaction. Izuku's head cocked. How is that even known to him? Were we even given numbers? The first 3 are the 1, 2, and 3 pointers, yay. Well, that 4th one is a 0 pointer. Think of it like a thwomp in Super Mario Bros. Compared to the other 3 GOOMBAS. It's just an obstacle and it's probably better to avoid it. Have fun with that." Present Mike laughed in his head. "Just remember to report to the testing site on your packet immediately after the written exam and be sure to follow the rules listed. I don't want to see any of my young listeners getting in trouble for attacking a fellow listener. I'm looking at you, examinee 3543. Bakugo went pale and said, "How the fuck? Really, when did we receive the numbers? With that, I'll let you all go. Just remember to go beyond, plus ultra." For Izuku, finishing the written exam was a breeze. After all, you spend a lot of your free time in the library when you're a quirkless teen with no social life. It was a little more challenging for him and the other examinees to wait in front of the enormous gates to the enormous fictitious city. One examinee was already in the fetal position when Izuku turned to face them. "All right, somewhat, perhaps." Present Mike told everyone in the battle zones, "Okay, young listeners, we're just waiting for a few more of you to finish up. Remember, you only have 10 minutes to gather points." Izuku gasped and murmured nervously, "Okay, I've never used one for all, but I remember that All Might said there'd be some kickback. Not entirely sure what that means, but I'm guessing it can't be good, and then I can only use my Sharingan for about 8 minutes continuously before it times out, so I'll need to take breaks every so often to let it rest and max out my time. I guess my best bet is just to use the Sharingan to find the robot's weaknesses and beat them however I can without risking one for all." After a successful brainstorm, Izuku looked up and smiled, but many of the other potential students stared at him in confusion. Never again. The same girl he spoke to was then in front of him. It's that sweet girl. I should give her a proper thank you for that earlier. But then he felt a firm hand clasp onto his shoulder, stopping his strides. Izuku turned and saw the same stern, strangely tall boy who had called him out in front of the auditorium. Oh no. She's clearly trying to focus before the exam right now. You weren't thinking about interrupting her, were you? Said the taller child, narrowing his eyes. Izuku frantically shook his head and waved his hands in agreement, saying, No, I swear. I just wanted to thank her for helping Mio. Izuku was so taken aback by the other boy's statement that he was unable to respond. You're not some dummy contender Ua hired to trip us all up, right? Start. The gates swung open abruptly. Everyone was now so taken aback that they were unable to respond. What? There are no countdowns in real life. Get moving, said Present Mike, laughing into his microphone. Every other examinee was already rushing into the fictitious city when Izuku turned to face the gates. Oh no, I'm already lagging behind. Desperate to find a villain robot, he ran through the cityscape. You have to start looking for points, Izuku exclaimed. Sharingan. As he experienced the ringing sound he had come to love along with a slight itching sensation in his eyes. Alright, I noticed that the city center is crowded. There is a lot of competition, so it's probably not a good place to go. I'll stick to the edges instead. Izuku ran straight into a three-pointer after thinking. Oh no, I suppose my goal was to score points as quickly as possible. I believe its power source is directly beneath the missile launchers, and I can see 3 weak spots in its shell. It also moves predictably and is incredibly slow. I'm capable. Izuku wasn't moving, which was the only issue. Why am I not moving? The frightened young man was charged by the robot. What a shit. He looked away and held his hands in front of his face, but as a bright blue beam of electricity pierced the robot directly, he felt a gust of wind. The beam's source, a blond boy with a shit-eating smirk and big, almost glittering eyes, was the object of his attention. The blond boy bowed and fled, probably to steal more points. Merci, mon ami. We make quite the team, non? But I'm afraid we'll never meet again. Adieu, he said. Izuku gave a headshake. I froze completely. Damn it. I must gather myself. Get a grip, Midoriya, and keep in mind where you came from. Izuku picked up a sharp metal panel from the fallen robot, his eyes blazing with determination and the inherent glow of his quirk. It looks like this will be useful. At the very least, I should be able to use this as a shield because the three-pointers are said to have the strongest armor. Izuku continued to run until he came across a two-pointer, another villain. It swung its scorpion tail at the boy right away. Despite being quicker than the three-pointer, the robot was unable to surpass the Sharingan or the training its user underwent. He deflected its follow-up with the metal panel and easily avoided the tail. Then Izuku rolled to the back of the robot and used the panel to knock the tail off with a little effort. Then, with his left hand firmly grasping his preferred weapon, he grasped the pointed end with his right and buried it in the robot's central console. It died instantly, sputtering. Okay, 2 points for that, 6 minutes and 2 seconds left. Whoa. I urgently need more points. A one-pointer rolled around the corner just in time. Oh. The sound of me fighting must have drawn it in. Oh crap. Izuku had to roll out of the way as the tiny robot blasted straight past him. Compared to the two-pointer, it is much faster. My Sharingan is unable to keep up. I have to make it less mobile. With the sharp end of his panel held outward, Izuku started charging the robot after noticing the rubber tire it was using. In response, the robot rolled in the direction of its adversary, its metal arm extended. However, Izuku slid on the ground at the last second and pushed the panel into the tire, causing it to burst. He simultaneously flipped the robot onto its back by pushing the now exposed rim up with his legs. Lighter than all might, for sure. Izuku scored another point after decapitating the one-pointer with a swift panel swing. But that's only 3. Perhaps I should move inwards, since noise attracts the robots. I guess that's preferable to doing the same thing and hoping it works. Izuku paused his Sharingan and sprinted forward, slicing past a number of robots and other fighters. Well, I don't want to deprive the other examinees of points. Oh, I can't keep up with those one-pointers, but they're too quick. As it is, I can hardly follow their movements. Instead, I should look for 2- and 3-pointers. Izuku eventually found another 3-pointer after Present Mike signaled the 4-minute mark. This time, I won't freeze. Sharingan. Izuku was able to jump onto it when it stopped to turn because he could see a gap in its armor along the middle of it. The entire robot shuddered and began to spark as he pushed the panel's sharp end down the opening. Then, one by one, the missiles began to fire. Oh no, I must have made a mistake. Then he noticed some robots coming toward him, probably drawn by the explosion noises. This is useful to me. Izuku used all of his strength to twist the missile launcher in the direction of the group, and he saw as the resulting volley reduced the 3 1-pointers and 2 3-pointers to scrap metal. Then he turned to see a 1-pointer and another 2-pointer running in his direction. Izuku jumped off and began to move perpendicular to the 1-pointer, pushing the panel the remaining distance through the 3-pointer he had mounted. He dodged beneath it at the last second, but its metal arm caught a glimpse of him. That will bruise, I see. He started in the direction of the 2-pointer but came to a halt just short of it. If I timed this correctly, it should be good right here. Then he turned back to face the 1-pointer, which was rolling faster and faster toward him. Nearly, right now. As the 2-pointer's scorpion tail sprang out, precisely impaling the 1-pointer's head, Izuku ducked and shifted to the side right. The 2-pointer was also destroyed as the broken robot kept rolling straight into it. Sadly, Izuku's dodge was poorly timed, and he caught the 1-pointer's arm more forcefully. He moaned and gripped his stomach, keenly aware that another person was yelling that they had 28 points and another that they had 45. I can't sit around wasting time. I have just 18 points. I have to catch up with everyone. As many of the proctors and other heroes watched multiple screens showing the various cityscapes, Midnight remarked to them, quite the promising pool of candidates this year. The Space Hero, 13, said, indeed. This environment tends to bring out the absolute best in them. From those who gather intelligence before acting, people who use their mobility and reflexes to navigate the large area, those who can adapt to any scenario on the fly. A loud boom from one of the TV speakers cut 13 off in the middle of her thought. When he saw a blond boy panting in a heap of scrap metal with his hands smoking, he laughed and said, and then there are just natural-born warriors. In his characteristically excited tone, Present Mike smiled and said, this year might have some good students so far, but there's really only one way to know for sure. A red button was pressed by him. Izuku ran past more and more examinees, but he didn't come across any robots to battle. Oh no, not a single one remains. I'm still so far behind that I have to return to the outskirts as soon as possible. Then a building collapsed and the whole city trembled. As everyone's mouths fell open, another student cried out, what the hell? That's the thwomp, huh? It's huge. Which Mario game is Present Mike playing? After a quick glance at the group of teenagers ahead, the 0-pointer began to roll forward, its tank-like treads crushing all the debris in its path. Izuku, like everyone else, began booking it in the other direction. It discreetly shifts course in the direction of the closest moving target based on its previous movements. I'll be safe as long as I'm quicker than the slowest person, then. OOWW. Izuku's heart froze. Instinctively, he knew that dozens of people were going by him as the enormous robot drew closer, but he needed to be certain. I'll be safe as long as I'm faster. I cannot squander All Might's preparation. He slowly turned around, afraid to find out what he already knew. That thing is too strong for me. All Might helped me a lot. I can't disappoint him. He used his Sharingan to zoom in and clearly saw a life form struggling beneath some debris. Falling right before an exam is unlucky. Even Katsuki Bakugo would turn tail as Izuku started to run, charging directly at the 0-pointer. Using her quirk, the kind girl was able to pry the debris off of her, but she clearly struggled to stand up, probably hurting her leg. The 0-pointer halted its advance and lowered its enormous arm gradually. She will be flattened by it, however, it will instantly change its target if I approach her more closely. He saw a number of debris mounds that resembled a ramp. Excellent. Izuku leapt from mound to mound before launching himself with all of his strength, landing squarely on the robot's forearm. Thanks to timing and momentum, it immediately halted its approach to the kind girl. All right, these studs will help me keep my footing. With wide open mouths, the other examinees observed the shy child they made fun of freely running up the 0-pointer without giving it a second thought. It should turn away from everyone else and toward me if I can reach its right shoulder. I can then wait until it's too late. Sadly, the Sharingan's time limit showed its ugly head, and Izuku lost his footing without his enhanced insight and perception. Whoa! Using it at a high intensity saves me time. He closed his eyes in terror of the impending fall. Izuku recalled All Might's words to him as he rolled off the robot's side, heading for its torso and a huge drop. You can be a hero. I can be a hero, I promise. Clench your buttocks. Izuku made himself open his eyes, and he managed to at least approach the 0-pointer's head by using his legs to push off the robot just before he fell. He was, regrettably, too far away to catch hold of it, but that wasn't the point. And let your heart cry out. Smash, Izuku said, pulling back his fist as the energy rushing through tore his sleeve. Izuku then punched the zero-pointer in the side of the head, and I mean pulverized when I say punch. With explosions running through its body, the enormous robot collapsed under the unexpected force and nearly flew into the building to its left. The examinees were taken aback. In the viewing area, the majority of the teachers did as well. Except for one bony man who smiled triumphantly. But Izuku did not feel triumphant at all. My arm, I'm going down. Tearful from the savage pain, he gripped his flapping appendage. I can't count on the Sharingan to save me. Even if I roll or land upright, I'll most likely die or become paralyzed. Perhaps, like All Might, I can use a New Hampshire smash to slow my decline. He prepared for the pain by drawing his other arm back. All right, 3, 2, 1, gee, gah. It's not as harsh, but wow, that hurts. The same sweet girl from earlier slapped Izuku in midair before he could launch his attack. Immediately, he slowed his descent and stopped a few feet above the ground. I'm still here? In an attempt to save the falling boy, the girl lowered the robot head she used to fly and tapped her fingers together vigorously. As fatigue and nausea caught up with her, she exclaimed, "Our release." The levitating boy immediately fell face first to the ground. The irony, oh. Izuku rose slowly, carefully holding his broken right arm, and said, Hey, are you okay? To his savior. Her cheeks puffing, she clapped her hands over her mouth after grinning up at him. Izuku turned just in time to avoid seeing anything, but he could definitely hear everything. It's nearly impressive. Still turning away, Izuku said, so you're not okay? Not wanting to put weight on her injured ankle, she leaned on the robot head and giggled sheepishly as she slowly landed on the ground. Sorry about that. My quirk makes me sick if I overdo it, but what about you? That arm looks bad, she said. Sorry about that. I think I overdid it, too, Izuku said with a sheepish laugh. Huh, I guess we matched then, she said with a light-hearted tone. Izuku's cheeks flushed. She's acting adorable, too. I'm unable to handle this. Her smile only made Izuku redder. I'm Uraraka, by the way. Ochako Uraraka. What's your name? She said. Izuku M. Midoriya. It's nice to meet you, Uraraka. He began to perspire heavily, and then he recalled how he had survived his fall, saying, Oh, and thanks for, saving my life. Uraraka laughed. I should be thanking you. The way you took down that robot was all bam and POW and boosh. It was so cool. I can't believe someone with a quirk like yours even needs to take the entrance exam. You should be a shoo-in for a recommendation. She's giving me a compliment, right? Heh. Why you think so, huh? What should I do now? This is the kind of distraction I need. Yes. Well done. Here, have some candy. Yes. Good job. Is that? The examinees gathered to see the person who destroyed the kaiju, and Recovery Girl walked among them. She went up to Uraraka and Izuku. HMPH. You seem like a good vessel right now. Work is still needed. I only hope that this doesn't become a habit for you. As she planted those frightful grandma lips on Izuku, Recovery Girl exclaimed, Oh dear, your own quirk did this to you? It would be best to ignore this child and let the other students know that we have already met. Izuku bowed and said, Oh, thank you, as his artwork returned to its green glow. Oh, it's no trouble. Now, let's see about fixing that ankle, Missy. Izuku looked at Uraraka, who was already staring at him, and sighed pitifully as Recovery Leg kissed Uraraka's leg. Even with all that training, I still didn't get enough points. Naturally, Izuku blushed in panic when she waved. He did, however, still smile, albeit sorrowfully. But I suppose it was for a good reason. After a week, Izuku gazed at the eye of the fish. The fish eye returned the stare. He looked at the delicate membrane covering the iris, the subtle browning from browning it in the fish oven, the black-like blackness of its pupil, the deep and rich cream-colored pigment, the subtle way the ocular organ conveyed its sheen, and... Izuku. Wah-ha. Mom. Inko Midoriya's voice interrupted the young boy's focus. Why were you staring at your fish? Should I be concerned, honey? Inko asked her son, looking at him anxiously from the other side of the dinner table. Sorry, Mom. I think I'm just tired is all, Izuku said, laughing uneasily. There was a relative silence as the dinner went on. So did the dishwashing. Even Izuku's bicep curls after dinner were performed in complete silence. Izuku. The operative phrase is, they were carried out. It's here, Izuku. Your letter from Ua, Izuku said, turning to face his mother, who was kneeling and holding out a light blue envelope. After giving the envelope a quick glance and nodding, he carried it into his room and shut the door. Outside, his mother paced uneasily. Izuku simply stared at the envelope after placing it flat on his desk. It's this. My denial. I am aware that I performed well on the written test, but the practical was a complete waste of all the hard work that All Might had put in. It makes sense why he hasn't gotten back to me. I think he learned how awful I was. Izuku ripped the envelope open and mumbled, well, time to get this over with. A tiny metal disc dropped out as he was doing this and started projecting right away. I am here as a hologram, astonished, Izuku exclaimed, All Might? Ha ha. You're probably wondering why I'm in your UA letter right now, but that's because I'm going to be a teacher next year. Isn't that exciting, young Midoriya? The symbol of Peace's hologram said with a chuckle. Izuku's mouth dropped even more as he exclaimed, and no way. However, he looked at the ground once more and recalled his exam score, saying, too bad I won't be around to see that. A producer-like voice muttered something off-screen, and All Might sighed, very well. Just make sure to cut this part out. Anyways, young Midoriya, as you're probably well aware, you passed the written portion, but you only got 18 villain points in the practical exam. Unfortunately, that's not enough to pass. Wrap it up. But I have so much more to tell him. With tears in his eyes, Izuku gave a sorrowful nod. I was already aware of that. I knew I was not admitted. Why, then, does this hurt so much? Luckily, there's more to it than that. What? Izuku asked, looking up. If you would, please look at this recording. All Might chuckled as he pushed a button on a remote control, causing a screen to appear behind him. A video feed began when he pressed another button. Present Mike was instantly recognizable to Izuku, who asked, Uraraka, what's she doing in my video? Excuse me? Mr. Present Mike? Uraraka said as she walked up to present Mike. What's up, listener? The pro hero asked, turning to face the young girl. She trembled. You know that curly-haired boy? Kinda plain looking? I heard him say that he didn't get enough points. But he only got injured 'cause he was saving me. So I was wondering if I could give him some of my points. At least the ones he lost because of me. Please. Uraraka raised her head slightly. Izuku said, she gave me her points? As his eyes grew wide. While I love your fiery spirit, young listener, I'm afraid I can't transfer points. But you don't gotta worry about him, believe me, said Present Mike, who simply laughed in the video and put a comforting hand on Uraraka's head. Inspiring acts of selflessness in others. What kind of hero school would we be if we ignored an ability like that? That's why there's a secret component to the practical exam. Rescue points. All Might said as the video feed cut off and he turned to face Izuku, or at least the camera. Izuku felt a flutter in his heart. Hold on, what is he saying? A panel of 6 judges rated you all from 1 to 10 on how heroic your performance in the practical was. And you, young Midoriya, earned 60 rescue points. 60 points? All Might laughed. While we're at it, 45 to Ochako Uraraka. This places her at 4th overall and you, young Midoriya. Well, I'll let the leaderboard speak for itself. The full list of exam results appeared on the hologram. Where am I? Until something clicked. Izuku's gaze followed the list up and down. 78 points overall. More than Uraraka. And Bakugo came in second. Awesome. However, he scored 77 points, which indicates. Whispering, Izuku said, holy shit. The voice of All Might sounded, ha ha. Yes, young Midoriya. You got first in the exam. Congratulations on getting the top score, my boy. That means you pass with flying colors. Izuku began to cry as he recalled all that he had gone through. Years of suffering, prejudice, and, worst of all, sympathy. This was the result of all that. Returning, All Might held out his hand and said, come, young Midoriya. This is your hero academia. The suspense was eating away at Inko, who was on the other side of the door, ready to explode in. However, Izuku opened the door first and gave her a huge hug before she could do so, almost giving her a heart attack. Mom, I got in. I got the top score, she exclaimed. Oh Izu! Inko exclaimed, a tiny waterfall bursting from each eye as he gasped with delight. Then she passed out. Later that evening, Toshinori Yagi observed the moonlight glinting on the gently undulating ocean floor. The air was filled with the sound of a young couple laughing at a nearby gazebo on the pier. So serene. Letting the fresh air fill his damaged lungs, Toshinori pondered. All Might. Who's that? Spit out blood like a geyser from the disguised symbol of peace. All Might? Where? The couple in the background began shouting abruptly. Izuku heard All Might hiss, say, my bad, I was seeing things. Nodding, Izuku said, oh, my bad, I was seeing things. The pair groaned in disappointment and resumed their date. Might simply let out a sigh. That was peaceful. Congrats on making it into UA, he said, raising his hand. Thanks. Though I was surprised that you're going to be teaching there, especially since your official office is in Minato Ward, Izuku said with a smile and a high five. All Might chopped his protege's head lightly and said, stop it. Izuku sheepishly rubbed his head and said, sorry. He continued, just so you know, I didn't tell any judges about you being my successor. I figured you'd think that'd be like cheating. Oh, thank you. The Mighty said, I originally planned on coming to UA to find a successor, but since I found you first, I decided to take the job anyways, so I could monitor your progress. Izuku laughed and glanced down. You've done, and you're still doing, so much for me. But even after all that training, my arm was useless after using one for all just once. I'm a pretty poor excuse for a successor. All Might picked up some empty cans from the sand and reprimanded them, saying, nonsense, you only got my power that day. Even I didn't adjust that quickly. You're barely capable of containing one for all for now. All Might changed halfway through his sentence and crushed the cans to demonstrate his point that, but as you grow and temper yourself, you'll be able to control it much better and make it into a real force for good. Wow, it really is All Might, exclaimed the couple behind them. Asshat. Come, young Midoriya. Let's run. Recalling the events of the day, Izuku grinned as he walked home on the sidewalk, led solely by the lamp's drab light. I'm glad All Might and I were able to escape. Otherwise, that might have been a bad thing. The fact that I am officially the best applicant in my year still amazes me. How does Kachan feel about that, hee. As it happened, Izuku wouldn't have to wait long to learn, because Bakugo himself was standing directly in front of him, just one block from his home. Kachan. What are you doing here? Izuku said, pale. Bakugo said, his face looking uncannily normal, Deku. Let's talk. Deku. Let's talk. Izuku's heart froze. He's going to kill me, for crying out loud. Is this related to the test? Bakugo walked slowly and deliberately toward Izuku, saying, the exam. Yes, it is. Izuku's face twisted in fear. The blonde boy halted just a foot from Izuku and said in a whisper, his face obscured by the dim streetlights, I saw the results from the practical. How did you cheat? He asked. Huh? Cheat? Izuku's expression changed from one of fear to one of perplexity. Bakugo's face was briefly illuminated by the headlights of a passing car. It goes without saying that Izuku's happiness about his day vanished. Bakugo grabbed Izuku's jacket and pushed him against a wall while smoking menacingly. I said, how the fuck did you cheat? Bakugo said, there's no goddamn way a quirkless loser like you could have beaten my score. Izuku began to scream and wave his hands, and no, wait Kachan, I didn't cheat I swear. I only beat a couple of robots. You saw I only had 18 villain points. And even then, most of those were because one of their missile launchers went haywire. Really, I didn't do that well compared to you. If it wasn't for rescue points, I wouldn't have even gotten in. I didn't try to beat your score, I swear. Damn it. Damn it. I don't give a fuck how many of what you got. I was supposed to be the only one WHO got in from our school. Me? Bakugo said, his hands quitting smoking, suggesting that he was a little happier about the situation, but his grip remained firm. Bakugo's mind flashed back to his childhood fall into a creek as he looked down and began to shake. My plans. Ruined. All because of you. You just love shoving your nose where it don't belong, don't ya? He said. He recalled that he had laughed it off, but Deku came up to him, looking at him and holding out his hand. Those eyes are so pitiful. For me. And that villain again. Those eyes are so dumb, right now. When Bakugo looked up, he saw that Deku's eyes were indeed filled with panic and fear, but also a hint of sympathy and worry. Is he all right? This is worse than usual, but I know his ego is larger than Mount Lady's. He must be under a lot of pressure to be the best, I suppose. Bakugo, however, took a different view. Does Deku feel sorry for me? Deku. Quirkless Deku? Concerns for me? Fuck that. Listen Deku, I'm gonna be the #1 hero someday, so stop looking at me like that and stop getting in my fucking way. Bakugo yelled as his eyes widened and his grip tightened. Don't let me see you at UA, got it? Or better yet, just drop out altogether. Not like a quirkless Deku could ever be a real hero. He threw Izuku to the ground and stormed off in a huff. Bakugo began to walk home, but he stopped dead in his tracks when Izuku yelled, "Kachan!" Izuku was standing back up, his fists clenched. More amazing, though, was the fact that he was looking directly at his childhood friend and saying, "Someone told me that I could be a hero. It's because of them that I've gotten this far." Izuku remembered that punch he had given the 0-pointer as he glanced at his clenched right fist. "I can't let them down now, I have to keep going, whether you want me to or not," he said, turning back to Bakugo. Before continuing on his walk home, Bakugo stood in stunned silence. Oh wow. I can't believe I stood up to Kachan. I guess today was pretty good after all." Izuku maintained his brave front until his friend disappeared by turning the corner. Bakugo, meanwhile, was deep in contemplation. When did Deku have the courage to respond? What a jerk. He then had a flashback to when he had protected Bakugo's body from the sludge villain's attacks, or when Izuku had raised that hand to him when they were children. He thought about what he had said to Izuku earlier that fateful day after that. Maybe you'll be lucky and be reborn with a quirk in your next life. With a sigh, Bakugo turned to face his feet and said, "Shit. After 2 weeks, you have your pocket tissues?" Izuku bent down to his laces and said, "Yay. And your handkerchief? Your hanky?" After tying his shoes and smoothing out his uniform, Izuku said, "Yay, Mom. I gotta hurry or I'll be late." He then opened the door. "Oh, and Izuku." "What?" Izuku whimpered, turning away from the doorframe in frustration. With glossy eyes, Inko simply grinned and said, "You're really cool." Surprised, Izuku grinned appreciatively and said, "I'll see you later." The train ride to UA from his house took roughly 40 minutes. He felt himself trembling during the entire ride as the truth of his predicament gradually set in. "Although I've seen Recovery Girl before, I'm going to the best hero school in the nation." This time, it felt different to stand in front of the gates. Get a visitor's badge without having to wait for All Might. With that most powerful of weapons, his student ID, Izuku walked confidently through the gates. This, in his opinion, indicates that he did not trip, cry, fall, combust on his own, blush, perspire, die, mutter, or cry. Alright, he did shed a tear or two. This campus is enormous. Alright, Class 1A, where are you? Before encountering a door that was appropriate for the size of the campus, Izuku walked through the corridors of one of the towers, trying his best to heed the signs. It's enormous, however, this indicates 1A. He inhaled deeply. All right. This is the beginning of the rest of your life. He pulled the door open. All I can hope is that Kachan and the frightful exam guy aren't in my class, or that one Frenchman. Get your feet off of that desk. That's disrespectful to the carpenters who slaved over its craftsmanship and to our elders who learned from there. That's only 1 out of 3, though. That's something I can manage. Izuku faintly heard someone ask, "Isn't my belt so magnifique?" from inside the classroom. Alright, 66.7% isn't bad. Furthermore, those two pale in comparison to HMPH. You talk funny. Where you from, extra? Oh, what a waste. My name is Tenya Iida. I attended Somei Academy for junior high. However, my family and I are originally FR, Bakugo said, and the tall, glasses-wearing boy proudly stood up to respond. Bakugo cracked a sly grin. "Oh, a Somei kid? Didn't realize you were an elite. Maybe I should just blow you away right now and save myself the trouble later." What? Are you sure you're trying to be a hero? The tall boy exclaimed, taking a step back in complete shock. "Oh, it's you," he said as he saw Izuku standing, or rather, trembling, by the entrance. "I know we met once before, but I am pleased to make your acquaintance again. My name is," he said, approaching in a manner that was also somewhat running and bowing slightly. Izuku bowed in return, sweating a little, saying, Oh, I already heard. My name's Izuku Midoriya. Nice to meet you too, Iida." Bakugo squinted, but he turned his head away without acknowledging much. Now, a few of the classroom's overheard individuals turned to face him. An individual with black streaks in their spiky blonde hair said, "Wait, Izuku Midoriya? Didn't he get the top score on the practical?" "Oh, yay, I think you're right. Man, with a point total like that, I bet he's got a crazy strong quirk," said a girl with pink skin and hair and 2 angled horns. "Wow. I bet he's so manly," exclaimed a student with spiked red hair, who appeared to be on the verge of tears despite his enormous smile. A child in the rear of the classroom looked up. He had heterochromia, red and white hair that was evenly split, and a big pink scar over his left eye. His eyes narrowed as he focused on the subject of his classmates' conversation. Top score, EH. Midoriya, you easily ascertained the true purpose of the exam, didn't you? Yet I judged you harshly beforehand. How foolish of me. Please, accept my humble apologies, for you are certainly the superior candidate, Iida said, slamming his fist on his other hand like a judge's gavel. And no, I didn't ascertain anything, I promise. Izuku waved his hands wildly, and even though I know he's complimenting me, his intensity still makes me feel afraid. Oh, it's Izuku. You Uraraka, Izuku said, almost turning into a tomato. First name basis? Wow. I was hoping you'd get in, and then I saw your name at the top of the chart and I was like, wow. Uraraka said with a smile that highlighted her natural blush. A sheepish smile crossed his face as he said, oh, well, I should really be thanking you since you went to talk to present Mike and all. Huh? She asked, tilting her head. How do you know about that? The color went out of his face. Whoa. If you're here to socialize, you should just leave. This is the hero course at UA, not some public high school in Tokyo, said the enormous caterpillar, which fortunately served as a distraction. Everyone slowly turned to face the interruption, their faces displaying a mixture of fear, confusion, and mild interest. With a sigh, the caterpillar started to unzip itself, exposing a big sleeping bag and a tall, lanky man. It took you a whole 8 seconds to quiet down. Time is precious, and you just wasted mine. You guys aren't too bright, are you? Izuku's head turned a little. I can't recall where I saw him, but he looks familiar. The unidentified man took out a juice box, drained it in one large gulp, and tossed it aside. I'm your homeroom teacher, Shota Aizawa. Nice to meet you. The kid with the yellow hair from before laughed and muttered, I don't think he means that. Izuku furrowed his brow. He must be a pro hero if he teaches our homeroom. However, I don't recall ever seeing him on television. To be sure, I'll need to review my journals later. Taking a blue uniform with red trim and white lettering out of his sleeping bag, Aizawa said, put these on and meet me out on the practice field. Looking through the class files, All Might looked for the first hint of young Midoriya's name. There, let's see. Class 1A, nice. Young Uraraka is in there too. I'm sure they'll get along well. Young Bakugo, though, might be trouble based on young Midoriya's anecdotes. But the homeroom teacher is. Oh shit. All Might's eyes widened and he almost spat blood. Now that you're all here, we can begin the quirk apprehension test, said Aizawa, cracking his neck as the class assembled at the training field began to perspire. Uraraka argued, what? A test on the first day? What about orientation and the school assembly and? She said, UA gives me a lot of freedom on how to teach. If you want to waste your time on petty stuff like that, feel free to go now. I'll fill out your expulsion form in the meantime. Uraraka fell silent instantly and even took a step back. Izuku started to perspire. So frightening, continued Aizawa, you all had to do physicals and fitness tests in junior high, but you could never use your quirks. Just another example of the subpar government at work. But if I'm going to teach you anything, I need to know where you're all at right now. So you're going to use your quirks freely to complete all these tests. Aizawa handed Bakugo a softball with a band of sensors embedded around it and said, Bakugo, you had the most villain points on the practical by a long shot. I want you to throw this as far as you can. He glanced at his clipboard. Silently, Bakugo picked up the ball and made his way to the throwing circle. Die! He roared, winding up and throwing it with a literal bang. Izuku went pale. Perish. The only sign that the ball had landed was a beep on Aizawa's monitoring device as it shot through the air and disappeared. See that? He said, holding it out. That's a hero score. Almost screaming, a short child with purple balls sticking out of his head said, 705.2 meters? That's insane. Wow, this kinda looks fun, cheerfully exclaimed the pink girl from earlier. A man with cylinders on his arm, black hair, and a constant smile said, and we get to use our quirks completely. This'll be a breeze. Aizawa cracked a grin, but it made the space fun. A breeze? Since you're already taking this so lightly, let's raise the stakes. Lowest score is expelled. Capiche? I, and the rest of this school, are going to beat you down until you can barely move, all to make you better heroes. If you can't withstand that, you're out. That's what it means to go plus ultra. Except for Bakugo, the half-and-half boy from before, and an older-looking woman with spiky black hair, everyone just stood in awe. After that, Aizawa enumerated the incidents, and Izuku's mood declined with each declaration. This is awful. The Sharingan will be useless on the majority of these, and One for All is currently essentially a glass cannon. It might improve my technique in the long jump or my ability to toss the ball to determine the angle of my throw, but it won't make a difference in comparison to what some of these guys are capable of. All I have to do is push myself to the limit. If only things were that easy. Izuku finished 10th in the 50-meter sprint, right behind a big guy who took a cinnamon roll and ran so hard he cracked the ground. The race went fairly well. The tall girl, however, who took a skateboard out from under her shirt and rode it to a comfortable 5.65 second time, was still more bizarre than that. I want to ask her so many questions. He instinctively reached for his notebook. He was only able to apply 56 kilograms of pressure during the grip strength test. Even though he placed in the top 10, the multi-limbed man's score of 540 kilograms was much higher. Alright, I'm not doing poorly, but I'm also not doing well. However, I might be able to improve my score now. Whispering, Izuku said, Sharingan. His quirk came to life, and he began to watch the people who came before him. Maybe I can learn something from the others, he whispered as he followed their movements. I can't make explosions, so I can't replicate that, and I can't shoot a laser beam, so that's out of the question. The girl with the pink hair approached the starting line. She performed admirably in the 50-meter dash, if I recall correctly. She appears athletic as well. Perhaps she can tell me something. He carefully observed her lead up and jump, even focusing on her landing form and mid-air form. I should be able to push off harder than her, even though she runs faster than me up to the jump point. I can do this because none of her movements were too difficult for me to perform. I could even see where I should jump from to get farther away from her. Oh, is that your quirk, Izuku? Uraraka murmured, approaching too closely and examining his crimson eyes. A large portion of the class immediately turned to face him, curious about the peculiarity of the leading contender. Fortunately, Izuku's quirk was automatically deactivated by the surprise. Wah? She's so close to me, and they're all trying to gauge me, and I could really avoid Kachan getting mad at me again. Wait, did I ever mention that I had a quirk to him? Bakugo glanced at Midoriya as well, but more because he was perplexed by the drugs Uraraka was taking. Deku's quirkless, dumbass. Izuku started to perspire. No, I didn't. Iida raised his eyebrows. What are you talking about, Bakugo? Did you not hear about Midoriya's feat against the zero-pointer in the exam? What are you talking about, extra? Aizawa cut the argument short by saying, Midoriya, you're up. Izuku lined up his jump, walked up to the line, and activated his Sharingan. There's nothing to do but hope he doesn't notice them. Not having to be emasculated on my first day of school, hee. Taking a deep breath, he started running and jumped at the right time. With flawless form, he flew through the air and even made a graceful landing. Yes. He grinned as he glanced at the ruler beside the sandpit where he had landed. Not too horrible. I'm undoubtedly among the top 5. He wasn't. The man with the tentacles and multiple limbs moved over the pit with a surprising amount of grace for his size by using the membranes that connected his arms. This time, the big guy jumped over the pit completely and ate a brownie. The ice quirk user simply made an ice bridge and crossed the pit. Whoa. I am aware that I am passing, but Bakugo was already glaring at Izuku when he turned to face him. Despite the trembling in his hands and the perspiration running down his brow, he took a reflexive step back while keeping eye contact. Just keep your eyes on it. Recall that you now possess 2 quirks. Don't be scared to look him in the eye now that you're at UA. This motivational speech is strange. Izuku got the second worst score, only surpassed by the guy with multiple disabilities who essentially shuffled from side to side like a clumsy middle school dance. The repeated side steps went about as well as he could have hoped. Even though he tried to imitate the pink girl again, he ended up getting lightheaded and falling on his butt. It's terrible that he's so large. He essentially crossed the boundary that Aizawa-sensei assigned us. Izuku's nervousness overcame him during the ball throwing, especially after witnessing Uraraka throw an infinity. Everybody has at least one amazing score, and I need as many points as possible after my most recent event. I have to do this even if it breaks my arm. Izuku whispered, Sharingan, and began charging up One for All as soon as he was called to the plate. Whispered Uraraka, Izuku's not doing so well, is he? At least compared to what his score was. Iida responded, yes, but I'm very intrigued to see Midoriya's performance in this event given the power he displayed in that attack against the arena trap. Although it did damage him severely, so perhaps he has been saving that strength. Bakugo simply gazed in utter shock at the two. Please. Only because of those dumb rescue points did Deku pass. He lacks the skills necessary to pass this test. Izuku, meanwhile, was in awe of himself. Whoa. As I charge one for all, I can truly see my own life force becoming brighter and brighter with my Sharingan. Starting the wind up, he withdrew his hand. I must move my hand precisely in this manner to achieve the 45-degree angle that is ideal for distance. Izuku used his natural quirk to execute his throw after visualizing it. Reduce the wattage and shorten the cooking time when putting an egg in the microwave. Electricity crackled in his veins as red and green lines rippled down his arm. I sense it, it's not as horrible as it was. He felt the floodgates open, though, and the full force of his second quirk rushed into his arm as he threw the ball. Whoa! As he tossed the ball, Izuku thought. 46 meters. What? His face fell. No way. With a sly smile, Bakugo turned to face Iida and said, "See? Quirkless Deku." But by putting his scarf around Izuku and drawing him in, Aizawa immediately put an end to the argument, saying, "I erased your quirk." Izuku saw that his teacher's eyes were red and his hair was standing up. Izuku noticed that Aizawa had a pair of yellow goggles around his neck when the scarf was unfurled. "Why, you're Eraserhead, an underground hero," Izuku exclaimed, taken aback by the turning point. As his peers murmured about the revelation, Aizawa said, "You know why I called for Bakugo to do the demonstration and not you? Because if it were up to me, you'd never have gotten the top score." Huh? Izuku said, pale. Aizawa went on, "You didn't even use your quirk, so even though your perception and analysis against the small fries were impressive, half of your villain points came from bad luck and a malfunctioning robot. If it were up to me, you wouldn't have received those 9 points. Yes, you did destroy that enormous robot. But in the process, you trashed your arm in addition to destroying a building. You most likely would have perished or further damaged your body with your quirk if Uraraka hadn't come to your rescue. In my class, I don't need amateurs who can't control their quirks." With every word, Bakugo's eyes narrowed. Is he telling the truth about Deku's quirk? Has he been deceiving me for years? "You can try again," Aizawa said, obtaining another ball and passing it to Izuku, whose eyes stabilized as his hair dried and he rewound his scarf. "Try your hardest and ruin your chances in the next 3 events, or don't try and don't receive any hero-level points." Iida and Uraraka watched solemnly as Izuku was left speechless and stunned. Uraraka spoke first, saying, "Looks like Aizawa-sensei really tore into Izuku. I'm hoping he finds a solution." Iida replied, "If Midoriya is unable to somehow live up to Aizawa-sensei's expectations for this event, I fear that he may face severe consequences. If he can't control his quirk, though, it might be best if he didn't progress any further, as harsh as it sounds." Everyone stopped and stared at the speaker. The tall young lady with the spiked ponytail. "In this line of work, you can't rely on others to pick up your slack. You need to be a self-sufficient hero on your own. And if using his quirk once really damaged him as much as Aizawa-sensei says it did, then he might simply not be able to be a hero." As Izuku heard his new classmates talk, his heart sank. How should I proceed? I will be the only student without at least one insanely high score if I don't use one for all, even though I was unable to pump the brakes on it during my last throw. As he started charging one for all, Izuku muttered, "Sharingan." He watched as the power in his right arm increased. "My Sharingan allows me to see it in real time. It's similar to electricity. But wait, what if I could visually assess how much I invested in one for all using the Sharingan?" Izuku focused on withdrawing his power, observing the luminosity of his arm's glow diminish as well as the energy's decrease in intensity. "Alright, that appears to be good. There is roughly half as much bright light as there once was. And just in case, perhaps to lessen the harm." He coiled up and threw the ball as hard as he could. However, he shifted all of one for all into his hand and yelled, "Smash!" as soon as the ball was about to escape his grasp. The softball's amazing speed caused tiny airbursts as it soared into the sky. Izuku grinned, but he instantly clutched his hand, which was a little red and crooked. "Oh no, 50% is still excessive. I wanted to press all into my index finger, but it was too difficult to simultaneously shift one for all while adjusting my trajectory with the Sharingan. However, I can tell that this is much better than it was. Despite my several fractures, Aizawa-sensei." Turning from the 535.5-meter score, Aizawa turned to face his student, who grinned with satisfaction and said, "I can still move." He demonstrated this by slightly clenching his fist. For a long time, the underground hero simply gazed at the child. The power was localized into his hand rather than his arm. Moreover, unlike against the arena trap, it doesn't appear limp or bloody. In addition to minimizing the damage area, he was able to instantly control his power. Aizawa simply smiled and said, "This kid." Iida kept nodding as Uraraka cheered. The tall girl herself appeared a little surprised, saying, "Huh, never mind then." But as they killed his puppy in front of him, Bakugo looked like someone had just told him his puppy had died. Does Deku have a peculiarity? Is there a quirk in quirkless Deku? The Tomo was still spinning when Izuku turned back to the students and Bakugo noticed those red eyes. Blinded by his anger and fears, Bakugo yelled, "Deku!" at his classmate. "What? You thought your quirk was so cool that you kept it hidden? Is that it? I don't need your pai-ga." Bakugo felt the familiar heat in his palms disappear as a number of suspiciously hard cloth strands wrapped around his body, locking him in place. "Cut it out. Another outburst like that and you're expelled. Got it?" Aizawa's glowing eyes glared. "You kids are gonna be the death of me. My quirk gives me serious dry eye." He then released Bakugo and deactivated his quirk, letting some liquid fall into his eyes. But what a cool quirk he has. When his weakness was exposed, everyone started to perspire. Bakugo gave Izuku another angry look before turning away. Izuku turned around, his heart still pounding from the moment he believed Bakugo would crush him. Aizawa exhaled. "Now that that's done, let's keep going. Yaoyorozu, can you make a splint for Midoriya?" Yaoyorozu, the tall girl, nodded and then reached under her shirt to retrieve a hand brace. "Would you like some help putting it on?" she asked firmly as she approached Izuku. Because she was so close, Izuku's face was redder than his eyes, but he still managed to squeak, "Why yes, please." Ignoring his shy demeanor, she gently put the brace on his right hand and tightened it, saying, "All done." Izuku said, "Wow, thank you, Yaoyorozu," as he looked at the splint. "I may have been too harsh," but she broke her serious demeanor with a gentle smile and said, "Of course. As classmates, it's important we support each other." Izuku then trailed her as she made her way back to the crowd. Iida chopped his hands quickly and exclaimed, "Midoriya, that result was most impressive." Invading her new friend's personal space, Uraraka nodded vivaciously and said, "Yeah, that was so cool. You were all, smash, and then the ball went, whoosh, and..." As soon as she began speaking, Izuku lost her train of thought and began to flush once more. "I should stop hanging out with attractive girls. For me, it just doesn't work out." All Might smiled as he watched the scene from behind a nearby building. "Young Midoriya, I was concerned about you, but wow, you love to let me down. How did you get so awesome?" All Might also saw the red face of his pupil and the Uraraka's lack of personal space awareness. "And well liked by women as well? You continue to amaze me." For Izuku, the remaining events went fairly well. He practiced agility a lot while learning to use his Sharingan, so the seated toe touch was simple. He finished 5th, behind the frog girl, the boy with the tail, who Izuku surmised was influenced by his martial arts training because he kaied whenever he did anything, the pink girl he copied so much, and Yaoyorozu. In fact, he was very good at the sit-ups and was able to finish in the top 3, only to be surpassed by Yaoyorozu and the man who appeared to be cut in 2. But the pull-ups were another matter. He had to perform the exercise with one arm because he was unable to use his right hand at all, even with the brace on. Only when he was completely worn out did he beat the child with purple balls on his head. When the endurance run finally arrived, Izuku managed to get back on track and finished in 5th place. "I think I could have accomplished much more if my hand hadn't been throbbing so badly. I wasn't really that exhausted." Aizawa brought everyone together at the end and displayed the outcomes on a screen. Izuku almost broke down when he saw his name in 12th place, despite his worst fears. "I succeeded, however. Kachan placed 3rd. Damn, I'm still behind him." Izuku's giddiness was cut short by a high-pitched shriek. "I'm gonna be expelled, and I haven't even copped a feel yet." The purple ball-haired child's choice of words made Izuku perspire, saying, "I guess that's Mineta." Iida gave a firm nod. How tragic to be expelled on his very first day of high school. Truly, UA earns its title as the premier hero course. By the way, I lied about the whole expulsion thing. When Aizawa returned to the homeroom after sending his justifiably irritated class to change and Midoriya to Recovery Girl, he heard a familiar, and, in his opinion, annoying, laugh. "Ha ha ha, Aizawa, you said the expulsion threat was just a trick, but April Fool's was last week. What do you want, All Might?" sighed Aizawa. "You've expelled over 100 students in your career at this school. So pray tell, why the sudden change in modus operandi?" All Might said, shedding a tear at the impolite reception. Eraserhead sighed. The only one I actually would have expelled was Midoriya, but he managed to improve my opinion of him, slightly. Ha! Then you see it, too? Young Midoriya's potential is overflowing. 2. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. It's just that he only recently learned he had a quirk, so I hear, and to see him improve so quickly is rather impressive, no? All Might shivered instantly. Perfect, you're too smooth, All Might. Something is wrong, whatever it is. If that's true, then I'll admit I had him pegged wrong. And I won't say he's completely devoid of potential, but regardless of his scores, he's still a glass cannon. And I won't humor anybody like that. The only thing crueler than stomping out a dream early is letting it continue too long. His thoughts turned to a decomposing body beneath the collapse of an overpass. Nothing like that will ever be acceptable to me again. Later on in the day, as they passed through the Ua gates to return home, Iida called, Midoriya, is your hand healed? Izuku smiled as he turned around. Oh, Iida, yay. Recovery girl healed it in a few seconds, flat. I just have to keep the brace Yaoyorozu made for the rest of the day and I should be good as new. Iida grinned. Good. I'm pleased to hear that you weren't permanently injured. Such a tragedy on your first would only serve to sour your high school experience. Izuku gave a sheepish laugh. I thought Iida was a little mean and intimidating, but he's actually very sincere and sincere. I understand that. Hey, Deku. Kei-Kachan. Izuku turned in a panic, almost throwing up. His voice sounds much higher than it used to. Not Kachan. She was more feminine and Boopnir. Fortunately, it was only Uraraka. Huh? Kachan? Isn't that your name for Bakugo? She asked. Why yay. Sorry, but he's really the only one who calls me Deku, so I thought it was him, Izuku said with a sheepish laugh. Huh? Why Deku? Is that some sort of inside joke? WL, it's sort of a different way to read the kanji for my name and it means, useless, so. Uraraka gasped. Oh, I thought that was like a friendly nickname or something, sorry about that. What aspect of our conversations felt cordial? Izuku started to perspire. But I kinda like the sound of it, Yano. Sounds like Dekiru. Has a real, never give up, kinda vibe, Yano. She said, smiling as she got back up. You can call me Deku. Izuku exclaimed, a smile tearing across his face as his cheeks swelled. I'm feeling reborn. She sighed, Midoriya, you shouldn't give in to peer pressure so quickly. I don't know what's happening anymore. There's so many people talking to me right now, Izuku muttered, burying his face in his hands. Izuku became aware that he had friends at that point. In contrast to the first day, the following one felt almost offensive. The students in Class 1A were forced to endure the worst thing a high school student could possibly experience. Learning. Instead of a physically and emotionally taxing exam. Even present Mike, with his contagious energy and eternal smile, was unable to make A Midsummer Night's Dream come to life. The R-rated hero, Midnight, was their biology teacher, and Mineta, who sat behind him, kept whispering how great that was, which did not help Izuku at all. With a shiver of delight, Mineta exclaimed, seriously, Midoriya. Just imagine how hot it'll be when she covers. Meiosis. This left one very agitated Greenette to reflect on his life decisions. Everyone in the class was thrilled after lunch, though, because their schedule read, in bolded letters, battle training. Coming through the door like a normal person, was the lessons instructor for that particular day. In an instant, All Might emerged, leaning into the classroom and supporting himself by holding onto the doorframe behind him. He was wearing his Silver Age costume, complete with a flapping and completely useless cape. The class erupted in cheers after a moment of stunned silence. The boy with the spiky hair yelled, All Might Sensei, you're so cool and manly. Ooh. Monsieur All Might Sensei's cape is magnifique, the glittering boy said. Even Izuku, who had watched All Might nearly every day for a year, was enthralled with the class's enthusiasm. All Might Sensei, I'm your biggest fan. Ha ha, I'm glad to see that you're all excited. I'm certainly excited myself to be your teacher, so let's all get along. But how about we just jump right into it? All Might exclaimed out loud as he pressed a button on the teacher's desk. This caused a portion of the left wall to extend outward, exposing 4 columns of 5 suitcases, each numbered 1 through 20. These are the costumes you specifically requested. We had our support company use the information you provided and what we found from the quirk registry build you the perfect outfits. Please put them on and meet me on ground beta. Izuku remained at his desk to open his backpack first and take out an old grocery bag that had been carefully tied so as not to release the valuable cargo inside, while everyone else flocked to their suitcases, excited to see their very own supersuits. He then went to the locker room after gathering his suitcase. "This is a symbol of my mother's belief in me, there's nothing else I can wear." Izuku then completed donning his costume, which included his mother's homemade jumpsuit as well as the mask and padding from the support company, and he and his classmates left as All Might praised them and whistled, saying, "Niece, you all look like proper heroes." "So obvious," he said after noticing Izuku's mouthguard and rabbit ears, "but the light green and white combination is an intriguing one." He cleared his throat and said, "Anyways, we'll be conducting battle trials in teams of 2. One group will play the role of heroes, while the other will play as villains." All Might pulled out a cheat sheet to everyone's delight. Ahem. "The scenario is that the villains have a nuclear warhead somewhere in the building to my left. The heroes have to infiltrate the building and secure the weapon and/or capture the villains. The villains will receive a 5-minute head start while the heroes get 15 minutes to complete their objective." After taking out his phone, the symbol of peace said, "I've already assigned teams using a random number generator, and they are as follows. Team A: Izuku Midoriya and Ochako Uraraka." Once more, Uraraka cheered and approached Izuku too closely, saying, "Yay? Our teams are the same, it must be fate." Izuku nodded but averted his eyes with a cunning flush. Team B: Mezzo Shoji and Shoto Todoroki. Momo Yaoyorozu and Minoru Mineta make up Team C. Team D: Tenya Iida and Katsuki Bakugo. "Who?" Bakugo asked, raising an eyebrow. Iida simply gasped in offense. Yuga Aoyama and Mina Ishido make up Team E. Team F: Koji Koda and Rikido Sato. Team G: Denki Kaminari and Jiro Kyoka. Tsuyu Asui and Fumikage Tokiyami make up Team H. Mashirao Ojiro and Toru Hagakuri make up Team I. Team J: Ajiro Kirishima and Honta Siro. That was a lot. And these lottery machines will decide the matchups. All Might exhaled deeply. Hero and villain, 2 lottery ball drawing machines, were indicated by All Might. Just not Kachan's team. Izuku began to perspire. Anything but Kachan's team. "Looks like round 1 is Team A versus Team D," he said, selecting the opening set. "I apologize, young Midoriya." "Oh, shit." Izuku almost passed out. Izuku nervously tapped his hand while muttering so loudly that the author was unable to put it into words. Despite the perspiration, Uraraka smiled and said, "Deku? You okay?" Izuku said, "Sorry about that. I guess I'm just nervous about facing Kachan," as he jolted out of his daze. "I guess I can't blame you. He bullied you, right?" Uraraka said with an understanding nod. He sighed and nodded. "Yay. I've always been behind him, always scared of standing in his way. His quirk is crazy strong, and his battle instincts are probably the best in the year. But beyond that, he's just the most driven person I've ever met. I think about how powerful he is and how focused he is. I just can't help but feel inspired." Then he blushed and said, Oh, sorry to put that all on you." Izuku turned to Uraraka and grinned excitedly, saying, "That's why today, I don't want to lose." Uraraka smiled back at him and said, "No, it's good. We're a team after all. So it's like a fated battle between men?" What? Anyways, you have any ideas on what we can do?" she asked, laughing at his apathetic response. "These are the notes I took on Kachan throughout the years, and in the back, I have a few notes on Iida from watching him during Aizawa-sensei's exam," Izuku said, nodding and pulling out his reliable notebook. When Uraraka saw that Iida's few notes were actually several pages fuller than her freezer during a mochi sale, her initial smile turned to a quick pale. So detailed. Glancing up at her partner, she said, "Your quirk cancels out gravity, right?" Uraraka replied, "Yay. If I touch something with my fingertips, I can make it weightless. But I can really only lift 3 tons. Izuku started to perspire. "That's a lot." "Well, I was thinking that since Iida's quirk is all about speed and mobility, if you're able to use your quirk on him, we get a major advantage." "Yay, that would work. But what about you, Deku? What does your quirk do exactly?" "I'm not ready for this. Saying I have 2 quirks is not enough. Please buy it, please buy it, please buy it. Oh, I have enhanced perception and strength and stuff. Oh, and I can trace people's movements and predict what they're going to do." "Oh wow. So your eyes changing color is just a part of that?" Uraraka asked with an inquisitive smile. She purchased it. Izuku gave a nod, but I can only use it for about 8 minutes straight, so I'll need to ration it out. And then I get hurt when I try to use my super strength. Uraraka was scratching her head. Huh, and your quirk's so strong that you might accidentally damage the building or the bomb, and that wouldn't be good. Especially since we're supposed to pretend like we're in a real city. I guess we should try to keep fighting to the higher floors to avoid destroying the foundation below. With an eyebrow lift, Izuku said, "Wow, Uraraka. You seem pretty knowledgeable about this kind of stuff." She racked her brain. Well, my parents are construction workers, so I kinda learned a couple of things along the way. Anyways, our time's almost up, so let's get ready. Given the design of her bodysuit, she began bouncing excitedly close to Izuku, which wasn't helping the poor boy. From the viewing center, All Might exclaimed, "Hero team, you may enter, 15 minutes on the clock, staring now." As soon as the recognizable slowdown effect appeared, Izuku exclaimed, "Sharingan. I can see them on the 5th floor." Uraraka was astonished. "Wow, you can see through walls, too? That's incredible. Just living things. Anyways, you think you can lift us both to the 6th floor?" Izuku said, blushing and laughing as he switched off his Sharingan. She tilted her head, "Sorry, but I can't make myself float that long. Only a couple seconds at most." Izuku cracked a grin. "No worries. We'll just have to work our way up, then." In order for her partner to ascend to the 2nd-story window and cautiously slide it open, Uraraka made him float. Then she grabbed his hand and jumped, pulling herself up onto solid ground with the spring-loaded heels in her boots. These mics are super sensitive, so they should pick up our voices, even when we're quiet. This way we can avoid making loud sounds, Izuku said in a whisper as he turned on his communicator. "Can you see if Iida or Bakugo have moved at all?" Uraraka asked, nodding and turning on hers as well. "They're still up there. They kinda look like they're arguing, though." Izuku reactivated his Sharingan, presumably due to Kachan. "Then we need to move. Let's go," Uraraka said with another smile, her contagious can-do attitude easing the tense atmosphere. The hero team used the provided blueprints extensively to navigate the labyrinthine hallways and halls as they stealthily made their way to the 3rd floor. "Any change?" inquired Uraraka. "It's only Iida," Izuku said, pale, after checking again after just a few minutes. "What took place?" "Where's Bakugo?" Uraraka asked, her heart pounding. "I'm looking," Izuku said, glancing quickly around the structure. He's where? Where? WH. Uraraka, get down. Just in time to prevent Bakugo from swinging around the corner and detonating a sizable explosion, Izuku nearly tackled his partner, Deku. "Deku. Are you alright?" Uraraka moaned as she sat up, but she gasped when she saw Deku's ripped mask and slightly flushed skin. He replied, "I'm fine. You should try to get to Iida. He's probably standing guard of the bomb. I knew Kachan would come for me, so I'll stay behind to stall him." "Nice dodging, Deku, but don't get ahead of yourself," Bakugo said with a menacing smile. "Got it. Keep me posted," Uraraka yelled as she hurried to the 4th floor stairs, despite her desire to object, recalling the fire in his eyes as they waited to enter. Bakugo didn't even attempt to stop her, much less look in her direction, as Izuku had foreseen. "That's your quirk, huh, Deku? Doesn't matter, it's still nothing compared to me," he said, staring into Izuku's bright red eyes as the Tomo gradually stopped rotating. The redhead with the spiky hair objected, saying, "A sneak attack. Bakugo's so unmanly." The girl in pink chuckled, "But man, that Midori sure can dodge. No surprise, though. He was pretty acrobatic yesterday." "But he sent away Uraraka despite their strength in numbers. Does he have a plan?" asked Yaoyorozu, shaking her head. As he watched the scene play out, All Might automatically tightened his hold on his microphone. "I understand how much this means to you, young Midoriya, but it will only hurt you if you turn this exercise into a personal feud." Bakugo swung his right arm in a powerful haymaker as he charged at Izuku. "I have to rely on my base strength because One for All might kill him and I don't have the time to control it. I could only flip him normally, but with my Sharingan." Izuku rushed forward and grabbed Bakugo's arm, firmly locking his opponent's bicep against his own chest. "Kachan, I know from analyzing the heroes I think are awesome, that you always lead with a right hook." Bakugo coughed, exhausted, and Izuku turned his hips slightly, dragging him along. Then he took advantage of the narrow passageway by pushing off with his foot against the wall behind him, sending Bakugo and himself into the wall in front of Izuku. where he made sure his shoulder completely sandwiched Bakugo's stomach with the concrete. Let's keep going. Kacchan is stunned. Izuku punched Bakugo hard in the jaw and temple before grabbing his tank top and tossing Bakugo over his shoulder. Bakugo was sandwiched between his childhood friend and a hard place once more when Izuku jumped into the flip at the last second, adding his own weight to the attack and speeding it up a little. Winded from his own assault, Izuku clambered to his feet and took a few deep breaths, watching Bakugo cough and moan. His face twisted into an even more impressive frown. I told you that I might be a hero, Kacchan. Now, I heard something equally significant from someone else. I'm the Deku. That never gives up from now on. Deku. Bakugo let out a feeble groan. All Might's mouth dropped to the ground. Young Midoriya, you are truly amazing. The redhead was giggling, saying, whoa, one of the most manly things I've ever seen was that. That was pretty cool, said the boy with the large mouth and cylindrical elbows, who also laughed. But the frog girl gazed inquisitively, saying, but Bakugo doesn't look all that hurt. After catching his breath, Izuku said, Kacchan, I know I said I didn't want to get in your way, but, he took hold of his fallen friend's arm and pulled it up, shielding his bare shoulder with his red shoe. I take it back. I can easily dislocate Kacchan's arm in this hold, which prevents him from firing explosions from it. It's a bit harsh, but it's the best I can do since I can't control one for all. But before Izuku knew it, he was flung back a dozen feet, his chest burning, as he felt the arm shift slightly. Dude, you really enjoy monologues. Bakugo stood up, his face positively giddy with anger, as his opponent struggled to stand. So, Deku, you think you're at my level? Keep me from laughing? You and I aren't even playing the same game. Damn it. Bakugo threw another explosion in Izuku's direction, sending the smaller boy back a few feet with some new burns. For the seemingly dozentth time, Uraraka heard the muffled boom of Bakugo's quirk on the third floor, and she tiptoed to the closest column, slowly peering out behind her to see Iida standing guard in front of the black and red papier-mâché bomb. It sounds really nasty down there, and I hope Deku is all right. Bakugo. Iida shouted into his communicator. What's happening? Bakugo. Darn him. Iida snarled in exasperation. He's running off to face them alone. However, it's possible that's simply how he plays the part of a villain. Uraraka laughed nervously in silence as Iida rubbed his chin, or at least the chin of his helmet. I believe Iida is looking for meaning where none exists. If that's the case, then I must also take on the role of a villain, the armored speedster cried as he rose tall and proud. MWA ha ha ha. To her later dismay, Uraraka's overly enthusiastic laugh became too much and she started laughing. Oh, Uraraka. You seem to have gotten past my henchman's protection, but whatever, today, I, a villain, will put an end to your reign of happiness and goodness, MWA ha ha ha. I gave up. I'll have to try my hardest to hit him with my quirk or at least stall him until Deku arrives. Uraraka couldn't help but laugh again, but she quickly collected herself. Iida swiftly picked it up and sped to the opposite end of the room as Uraraka ran away, frantically charging the bomb, saying, ha ha, I'm sorry, Uraraka, but that's not fast enough. Deku's notes mentioned something about gears, but I understood. Uraraka then charged Iida once more. Damn it, I can't get near him without him speeding off. As Bakugo looked for him, Izuku gasped for air and hid behind a wall. This is crazy. If he keeps using his explosions to block my view, I can't get any openings on him. Deku. Bakugo mockingly said, come on, you mentioned never giving up, right? Izuku tightened his jaw. I want to find him, but I only have 4 or 5 minutes left on my Sharingan, and I have 7 minutes left. I need more time to rest before I found you, about 20 feet away, Bakugo roared as he emerged from another hallway. Whoa. Sharingan. Bakugo charged but launched himself up and over Izuku with 3 quick explosions, which was too fast for the Sharingan, and he's changing his style on the fly, so my old notes are useless. Get away, Izuku cried as he prepared himself for the inevitable onslaught. While still down from the pain, Bakugo struck Izuku with his right gauntlet, saying, here's that hook you told me so much about, Deku. Izuku tried desperately to leap forward, away from his attacker, but he felt a white-hot burn as Bakugo fired another explosion right at his back. I have to use one for all. I can't let myself lose to Kacchan. Not this time. The greenette collapsed to the ground, his body aching. Feeling that familiar surge of power, Izuku began charging his second quirk, looking at his gloved hand. the white fabric glowing faintly from the energy underneath. Kachan is approaching. There is no time to control the output. I'll concentrate everything in my palm to reduce damage and push him away with a Texas smash. What? Bakugo growled. Do you still believe you're superior to me? Damn it, show me that power. Izuku turned quickly and held out his hand as he was about to fire another explosion at his back, and Bakugo realized he had been baited when he saw the hand glow brightly, even though it was covered by a glove. Shit. Izuku struck him with a palm strike, but Bakugo was able to defend himself by raising his left forearm in time. Texas smash. With all of his strength, Izuku pushed one for all into his right palm, causing the glove to tear apart instantly and send electricity swarming Izuku's hand. Bakugo's gauntlet shook violently, sending lightning arcing from his opponent's hand and shocking him painfully, and then it burst open, breaking the concrete as Bakugo was pushed into the wall across the hall by the incredible wind pressure from Izuku's attack. Bakugo paled as his gauntlet shook violently. Izuku grinned but then clutched his hand in agony, the epidermis on the top of his palm torn away. I should run. This is my chance. His hands were shaking, but not from pain, and Izuku turned away from his old friend, but he didn't go any farther. I don't want to run anymore. He turned back to Bakugo, who was slowly rising, one for all's electricity leaving small burn marks all over his body and his left arm bleeding. I have to get this done. Kachan. Bakugo gritted his teeth and looked up. Izuku gritted his teeth and said, I will not run, you are correct. I promised not to give up, so I will stay and see this through to completion. Bakugo snarled, you fucking idiot, you will be flattened by me. Izuku's communicator yelled, Deku. As they started to run at one another, are you alright? I've been utterly disregarding Uraraka, and I've practically forgotten that this is only a test, however, that gives me a thought. Izuku dodged Bakugo's right hook by sliding on the ground and reaching into one of his pouches with his left hand. Throw it. There. Izuku swiftly caught it with his right hand and crossed his arms after he tossed the object over his shoulder and watched it bounce off the floor and then the ceiling until it was within reach. Recorded. Bakugo was about to detonate the explosion when he said, what? When he saw a white strip of tape emerge from Deku's left hand, wrap around his back, and then enter his right hand, he looked down and almost screamed. Izuku threw the roll of tape while holding one end of it, then used the Sharingan to toss it around Bakugo and pull it with his free hand before grabbing the roll. After standing motionless for some time, Bakugo snarled, Deku. The only sound coming from the viewing center was All Might chanting, yes, as silently as possible, which was surprisingly silent. Holy shit, said the yellow-haired man at last, Midoriya has ninja skills. His accuracy with the capture tape is impressive. The frog girl agreed, ribbiting. That move seemed to shock and silence even Yaoyorozu, the IC analyst she was. After getting his bearings, All Might declared, Katsuki Bakugo has been taken prisoner. Young Bakugo can't ignore this. Young Midoriya. Please leave the building, he said with a proud smile. You seem to have finally managed to stand and shout, I am here, to your rival. When All Might made the announcement, Uraraka cheered, yes, he succeeded. Even though Iida was disappointed in his teammate, he secretly grinned that his new friend had defeated his tormentor, but he was currently dealing with a more serious issue. Well done, Uraraka. Trapping me inside a perimeter with capture tape. Iida was effectively forced to stay inside the rectangular area in order to avoid being disqualified because the gravity heroine, as promised, had wrapped capture tape around the columns. I should really thank Deku for sharing his notes with me, Uraraka grinned. I could jump over the tape, but not with the bomb on me, perhaps in second gear, but there's no room to get inside, so I'll just have to concentrate on getting it out of her way as long as I can in whatever space I have. Uraraka, on the other hand, had been trying to move much faster than she was physically capable of for a long time and appeared ready to drop, but even Iida was growing weary of avoiding her movements. Uraraka? Deku's voice came out of her communicator in a whisper. She brightened instantly, saying, Deku, are you okay? I'm all right. Actually, I'm currently by the stairs. I think I can try to divert Iida's attention so you can get the bomb if you can move to the opposite side of the room. Excited by the idea, Uraraka grinned and moved into position right next to the entrance, with Iida and the nuke between them. Uraraka then forgot the plan entirely when her partner stealthily emerged from the stairway, saying, Deku. He was covered in unsightly red burns, his suit was essentially ruined, and his right hand was bleeding profusely. What? Midoriya? Iida perked up and pivoted, nearly spitting up. What? How are you, Midoriya? That's the signal. Uraraka jumped, her spring heels providing the extra bounce she needed, but she waited too long, and Iida was able to regain his bearings enough to push the bomb away. She prepared herself, shaking off the shock of seeing her battered friend. As she landed and ran frantically for the bomb, Uraraka silently cursed herself. Deku cocked his left arm back without thinking as he watched the plan fall apart. Uraraka leaped forward. She obeyed without even thinking, pushing herself forward with her boots. When Iida saw this, he attempted to flee but was thrown backwards by a tremendous wind gust. Midoriya had punched Iida with full force into the gap between Uraraka and Iida, causing a surge of air pressure. Both the wall of the building next door and the wall across Izuku were shattered by the punch. Iida exclaimed, "I incredible," in awe of the power on exhibit. Uraraka then exclaimed, "Retrieved." With just 8 seconds remaining, All Might grinned as he declared the hero team's victory, but he felt guilty after witnessing his student's battered form. Maybe I could have stopped the battle sooner, but... Even as he lay on a stretcher to be carried by the UA medical bots to Recovery Girl, Izuku was grinning despite his bloody and exhausted state. All Might was certain that there were some happy tears in his eyes in addition to the pained ones. However, despite Yaoyorozu's offer of bandages, Bakugo remained mute as he made his way to the nurse's office, leaving his arm exposed. As the class calmed down after the first match's excitement, All Might cleared his throat and said, "Now, can someone tell me who the MVP of this match is?" "Oh, the pink girl said, holding up her hand. "Choose me, sensei." She was so enthusiastic that the red and blue blonde laughed. "Yes, young Ishido?" Midori. After defeating Bakugo, he stopped Iida with that amazing punch. Despite grinning that his student was receiving some attention, All Might shook his head and said, "Unfortunately, no. Are there any other people interested?" Raising her hand, Yaoyorozu said, "Both Uraraka and Iida, All Might sensei." "Oh, would you mind explaining?" she went on to say. In a real situation, that would have been disastrous. Bakugo allowed a personal grudge to get in the way and didn't even attempt to stop Uraraka from fleeing. Midoriya was also a victim of this, suffering 2 injuries and seriously damaging the building and the one next to it. Both Iida and Uraraka made errors, but they never wavered from their objectives. Uraraka relinquished her position, but she used the tape to limit Iida's movement. Near the end, Iida became sidetracked, but he managed to keep the bomb away. Ahem. The top student's analytical abilities astounded All Might. Well said. I would only add that, more than anyone else, Iida completely embodied his role. I apologize for not noticing that, said Yaoyorozu, bowing slightly. In order to better support one another as classmates, it's critical that we acknowledge one another's advantages and disadvantages. Anyways, now let's get on to the next battle. All Might got sweaty. It was so genuine. At some point, Bakugo returned silently, wearing a new bandage around his arm, and he sighed as he reflected on his match. Naturally, however, all of that was forgotten when he saw Team B. Several hours later, Recovery Girl reprimanded her young patient, saying, "Yeesh, keep getting injured like this and forget about being the next symbol of peace. You won't even make it past the sports festival." Izuku apologized, bowing. "I'm sorry, Recovery Girl. Today, I really tried not to." "I guess you're still learning, but try to learn to control one for all as soon as possible," she said, letting out a sigh and reclined in her chair. "In any event, it will make you a better hero." She cracked a smile, though, based on Mr. Bakugo's injuries, I'd say you gave close to what you got. With a slight flush, Izuku asked, "Was Keikaku-chan alright?" "Yes, he was fine," Recovery Girl said with a smile in response to the kind question. "In fact, I sent him back shortly after you got there. He almost seemed shocked to see you, so it's a shame you were unconscious." She gave a light-hearted laugh, but Izuku couldn't understand. Kacchan appeared anxious. I don't know the boy well enough to read his facial expressions, but it looked not angry, if that helps. The youthful heroine shrugged. "Why?" Izuku's eyes brightened. "Will you pardon me?" The Recovery Girl nodded, cocking her head at the unexpected request. "You probably finished your afternoon class by now because you slept through most of it. To allow me to finish healing you, please take it easy tonight and visit early tomorrow." Izuku hurriedly put on his uniform, omitting his jacket because of the sling on his right arm, packed his costume, which was regrettably destroyed, into the support company's suitcase, and returned to class. Unfortunately for him, Izuku had apparently impressed his classmates, and as soon as he opened the door, he was confronted by the loud people that are the worst nightmare of any lifelong introvert. "Hi. Midoriya has returned." The muscular guy with oversized lips walked up and clapped a startled Izuku on the shoulder. The left one. Luckily, I'm Sato. Bro, that was one hell of a fight. Dude, that was the manliest thing I've seen since we've gotten here, said the spiky redhead next. My name is Kirishima. Nice to meet you. We've only been here for 2 days, and Izuku was sweating. Midori, said the pink girl as she entered. You were awesome. It was really amazing how you flipped Bakugo. It would be great if we could break dance sometime. Is that a typical hobby? She perked up and tapped her chin, saying, Oh, by the way, my name is Mina. Ashido Mina. It's nice to meet you three. Izuku laughed uneasily. Did they stay to see me? Kirishima said, Oh, let me get that. As she saw the suitcase in his hands. Without even waiting for an answer, he snatched it up and put it back on the shelf that was still outstretched. Oh no. Regards, Kirishima. It's nothing, the redhead said, waving his hands, happy to assist. You know, we should go out sometime, said the yellow-haired man as he and Uraraka entered the room, both carrying textbooks. Which food is your favorite? Looking up thoughtfully, Uraraka said, I like mochi Deku. After adding her books to the other guy's stack, she ran over after noticing her bandaged friend halfway through her sentence, knocking the poor teenager to the ground. Can you move around okay? You weren't healed by recovery girl? She's always so close, and no she did. Izuku blushed. Hey, where's Kachan? He asked, noticing the suspicious absence of the person he most wanted to talk to. I simply didn't have enough stamina for her to finish. From beneath the books, the yellow-haired one said, Bakugo? Just a few minutes ago, he departed. By the way, my name is Denki Kaminari. Good to. Dude, he's gone. Sato cut in. Simply muttering, Kaminari said, Of course he is. A shrill voice called out to Bakugo as he was almost at the gate, Kachan. Izuku was running down the front steps with his right arm in a tight sling near his chest when he turned in a huff. Deku. What do you want? You really ought to hold off on gloating until your arm has healed. I wanted to tell you that today. It's my loss, Izuku said, shaking his head. The feisty teenager paused at this point, asking, What the fuck are you talking about? I couldn't have won if it hadn't been an exam, the greenette said, looking down. You most likely would have avoided it even if I had fully utilized my quirk, and I would then be too hurt to fight. That's why Izuku said, I don't want this kind of win, looking Bakugo square in the eyes. I want to defeat you fairly. After a moment of silence, Bakugo growled, Damn it. Damn it. Are you still disrespecting me? You? Trying to help all the time? I can do this myself, damn you. I'm not in need of your sympathy, on my own. I'll beat you and that half-and-half bastard. That's not it, Izuku said, shaking his head. So why do you do this kind of shit all the time? I can tell you to fuck off all I want, but you won't listen. Do you really believe you're that much better than me? Me? It's because I'm jealous of you, shouted Izuku. Bakugo finally stopped talking after this. The former went on, I've always seen how wonderful you were. And all I wanted to do was emulate you. I still desired your drive and influence even when you were a jerk. I believed that I could finally be like you after I acquired this quirk. However, I'm still unsure of how to use it. Trying to express his feelings, Izuku turned to Bakugo and said, But that's why. I'm going to make this borrowed power my own and defeat you with it. I will prove to you that I am superior to you. He steeled his gaze, ignoring the slight itching in his eyes. Bakugo looked at Izuku in silence, and he could almost feel the sincerity of that statement as he recalled all the abuse he and his goons had inflicted on the child, the taunts he had hurled, and the threats he had made. Nevertheless, Deku persisted, and now he was telling him that it was all to demonstrate their equality. Turning around, the ashy blonde relaxed his expression and began to walk, but remarked, Today's a draw. You had better get to work because you pose no threat to me. We'll resolve this one day. Surprised, Deku nodded and exclaimed, You got it. Although Bakugo remained silent, he remembered one of Izuku's words as he made his way to the station. Borrowed power. Izuku was simultaneously greeted by a surprise visitor, young Midoriya. He almost spat out, All Might. I couldn't help but overhear you and young Bakugo talking, the number one hero said with a hearty laugh. You seem to have really connected with him, I must say. However, I'm not sure why you activated your Sharingan. Before realizing his quirk was actually active, Izuku arched an eyebrow. Wah? How come I can't recall turning it on? Strange. He turned it off. All Might shrugged and went on, but I was surprised when you told him about One for All. What? I didn't. He recalled his words. I apologize profusely. All Might Sensei. I apologize, if you will. I apologize. He outshone even Iida with his deep and frequent bows. With a gentle chop, All Might stopped him, saying, fortunately, he doesn't seem to have noticed, but you need to be more cautious going forward. For good reason. One for All is a closely kept secret. Izuku said, I'm sorry, All Might. Looking down, all I wanted was to be honest with him. It's okay, All Might said with an understanding nod. I know what you're trying to do. And be happy. I believe you made a lasting impression on him. All Might gave his pupil a smile, and he got one in return. How are your injuries, by the way? They're fine, Izuku said, pointing to his arm. My broken bone has been fixed, but Recovery Girl was unable to mend a few minor fractures. Additionally, my hand remains somewhat sensitive. Yes, I saw that you didn't control your power output like you did with Aizawa, All Might said with a nod. Why not? Even with the Sharingan to assist me, it takes so long, Izuku sighed. I couldn't even breathe against someone as swift as Kachan, let alone concentrate on that. Don't ask questions, but I want you to focus one for all in your left arm, the older man said with a sympathetic nod before snapping his fingers. Aim for 3%. Your body ought to be able to tolerate that without any problems, in my opinion. Izuku arched an eyebrow but complied, measuring his power output with his Sharingan, saying, oh okay. About 3% is what I have. What comes next? Now you have to find out how it feels, All Might smiled. Huh? You mentioned that it takes too long to use your Sharingan to help control your output, he explained. Instead, train yourself to become accustomed to the feel of 3% using it. After that, you won't even have to think about calling upon it. Izuku smiled and said, oh, yes. After deactivating both quirks and recharging one for all to what he believed to be 3%, he concentrated on the power he felt and the energy flowing through his arm. To check, he activated his Sharingan and said, it's not even close, Izuku moaned in response to the enormous overshot. Anyone could do it if it were easy, All Might laughed. Simply keep practicing. Prior to concentrating on speeding it up, learn to feel the output. In any case, you don't want to keep your mother waiting because it's late. You'd better leave. Izuku nodded and went off to the station, napping on the train to regain some strength, and then arriving at his house, much to his mother's concern when she saw his arm. His evening was quite quiet, especially in comparison to the day he had. But there were two men, or at least one of them, in the streets, panicking just a block away. Hojo, damn it. Where is she? We're going to get our asses handed to us if we can't locate her. A young man with long, light hair and a black mask over his mouth shaped like a beak spoke. Calm, Toya, said his partner, a bald man with shadowed eyes and a light mask covering his face. The supervisor will comprehend. Furthermore, she won't really have anywhere to go. This is an attrition-based war. With a wild shake of his head, Toya said, no, dude. We will definitely be reset. I'd rather not be reset. I'm proud of my physique. To be honest, I do have some back pain, Hojo sighed. Resetting might not be the worst option. As they quarreled back and forth, they failed to notice a shivering child hiding beneath a dumpster near a particular apartment building. Her horn was painfully pressed against the asphalt, and her white hair was so covered in dirt that it looked black. Keisha Mainu had a story to tell. Throughout her storied career, she had covered sex scandals, political corruption, drug rings, slave trades, and even vigilantism, all while armed with her reliable microphone and assisted by her cameraman and co-conspirator, Tsukoshi Teme. So why, for heaven's sake, was she struggling so much to write a piece about Ua and All Might? She extended her microphone to a shorter boy with a youthful face and disheveled green hair, asking, excuse me, can you tell me what it's like to have All Might as a teacher? Sadly, his immature appearance was matched by his personality. Why I'm on TV. This went on for a few minutes. It seems that the mere prospect of appearing on television was enough to turn this youngster into a flawed being. They then went up to a short girl with big eyes and a brown bob cut, saying, ooh, he's like all muscly and big and stuff. The reporter broke out in perspiration. Even more useless than Captain Stutter is that. She was surprised to learn that there was such a thing as too helpful. Every day we learn from him is a reminder that we're attending the finest institution in the world. I could not be more humbled. To interview another boy with spiky ash blonde hair, she used wide-handed gestures to pull her cameraman away from the tall boy. But he yelled, fuck off you old hag, before she could even extend the microphone. Two figures grinned at the scene from the rear of the crowd. Cheeky brat, huh? Said a lanky, blue-haired man as he turned to face his companion, a gaseous figure of black and purple. The hot-tempered teenager grunted in recognition as Aizawa cleared his throat and said, I saw your battle trial recordings. Bakugo. Grow up. You're talented, so don't waste it by being an idiot. While grimacing at his desk, Bakugo said softly, yes, sir. And Midoriya, Izuku began to scream, you were the only student to get seriously injured. It was the second day, so you get a pass, but the next time it happens, you're going to write a 10-page paper on masochism graded by midnight. Got it? Why yes, Aizawa-sensei. The instructor nodded, and Aizawa's monotone but commanding voice said, okay, today we have something important to get out of the way. Nearly every student in the class took a sharp breath. One more test? You need to pick a class representative, so typical. Select me, cried Kaminari, I'll make a fantastic representative. No, elect me, exclaimed Ishido. Kirishima replied, nah, I'm the best choice. A manly job like class representative needs a manly person. And who better than me? Are you saying only guys can be class representative? Jiro Kyoka, the short girl with aux cords for her earlobes, asked with narrowed eyes. Huh? What are you talking about? What does being manly have to do with gender? Kirishima turned to face her, giving her the most snide, are you an idiot, expression imaginable. Mineta replied, pick me. I'll make sure all skirts can only be 30 centimeters or lower. Midoriya, wanna be my deputy? Please don't talk to me. Izuku buried his face in his hands. I miss middle school a lot. Almost every student in the class announced their own intention to run for office, one by one. We must settle this in a dignified, democratic method. Let us vote for class representative, was Ida's saving phrase at that point. But wouldn't everyone just vote for themselves? Retorted Yaoyorozu. Asui shot back, besides, we don't know each other well enough. Iida nodded his head. If most of us vote for ourselves, then whomever receives multiple votes must be the ideal candidate for having made such an impression in such a short amount of time. With a shrug, Aizawa climbed into his cocoon, sleeping bag and said, just hurry it up. Thus, the results were displayed on the board following the casting, counting, and recounting of the votes, at Ida's insistence. Midoriya Izuku, 3 votes 2 votes for Momo Yaoyorozu. All others. 0 to 1 votes at the third line. Izuku burst out laughing. So vague. Then he understood the significance of the vote. The teacher curled back up and fell asleep on his desk as if it were the most normal thing in the world after Aizawa looked at the board and grunted, all right, Midoriya is the class representative. Yaoyorozu is the deputy representative, and the rest of the class is study hall. Bakugo turned to the still shell-shocked Greenette, his eyes narrowed. He appeared to be about to say something, probably a curse word of some sort, but he simply turned around and said, whatever. To think it was my idea and I received only 1 vote. Iida gritted his teeth, but I'm glad someone thinks well of me. Denki grinned. Hey, this could work. Midoriya's super quick on his feet and Yaoyorozu's mad smart, too. When Aizawa finished speaking, Izuku lost consciousness and was only able to choke out, Congrats, Deku. I know you'll be an awesome representative, Uraraka yelled at her friend. At UA, lunchtime is typically a joyful occasion. An occasion to relish the companionship of friends. A moment to enjoy food prepared by a man who, for some reason, became a pro-hero and had a cooking quirk. Regretfully, Midoriya was still trembling from shock at the vote's result. The other people at his table, including Kirishima to his left, Iida to his right, Uraraka, Ishido, and Yaoyorozu to the opposite, had. Man, Midoriya, you need to lighten up. If I knew you'd be this freaked, I probably would have asked before I voted, Kirishima said, giving him a shoulder clap. Suddenly, Midoriya said, huh? You voted for me, Kirishima? I thought you said you wanted to be class representative? He replied, oh I do, but Iida really got me thinking that my vote should go to whoever deserved it most and you were definitely the manliest guy yesterday. Iida gave a nod of approval, indeed, Midoriya. Your quick thinking and iron jaw are traits we need in a leader. That's why I voted for you. Even though you all wanted to be class representative. You guys. Izuku's face twisted into an expression that combined thankfulness, tears, and a hint of humility as his heart tightened. Uraraka asked bluntly, what's wrong with your face? Just super grateful, is all. I'll be sure to live up to your expectations, Izuku said, wiping his eyes shining with what Kirishima would refer to as manly tears. Oh, wait. I voted for you, too. So who'd you vote for? Uraraka then inquired. With a laugh and a cheek scratch, Izuku said, oh, I voted for Iida, actually. What? Wow, Midoriya, I humbly thank you, Iida exclaimed in surprise. Bakugo bellowed from the other side of the table, would you extras shut it? We're trying to eat. With a drop of perspiration, the six fell silent instantly. Who are we? You're sitting by yourself. Then, energized by her juice, Uraraka said, humbly, Iida, are you a rich boy? Coughing into his hand, Iida said, well, my family does have many famous heroes in it, but I usually do not advertise it. Really? Izuku asked, his eyes glimmering with curiosity. Who? Someone we know? Are you familiar with Ingenium? Oh, yes. He has more than 60 sidekicks at his own agency and is an amazing professional. Is he related? With a proud laugh, Iida said, he's my brother. A swift Kirishima prevented Izuku from collapsing to the ground as he gasped and fell back in awe. Hey, Midoriya. This is excessive. Ashido shifted the conversation, saying, hey, Yaomomo. The raven-haired beauty blushed at the nickname. Who was your second vote? How do you know who my first vote was? She asked, raising an eyebrow. Well, it's kind of obvious that you voted for yourself, Ashido said with a laugh. You're so self-assured. With a gasp, she covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes sparkling, her solemn exterior shattering faster than Midoriya's bones. You think I'm confident? The sudden buoyancy made the other 5 people at the table smile. It was so refreshing. After gathering her thoughts, the taller girl replied, I'm not sure. Although I was, regrettably, with Mineta for the battle trial. I have only really spoken to Jiro, and I doubt that either of them cast a ballot for me. It must be the final individual to receive no votes. Do you know who that was, Iida? A loud alarm went off before the bespectacled boy could respond, causing a shrill ringing to fill the air. Security level 3 has been breached. Please evacuate in a calm and orderly fashion. Immediately, the majority of the older students fled in a panic, making a mad dash for the exit from the cafeteria. Hey, how are you? Kirishima questioned a senior. The school has been overrun by someone. It's been years since this occurred. You should also get moving. Before long, the Class 1A students were ensnared in the crowd, pushed awkwardly against lockers, walls, and even other students. Iida's face was slammed against the window, and he grunted. However, his eyes widened when he noticed a huge hole in the UA fence and a bunch of reporters scurrying through it. That's it. Calm down, everybody, only the press is to blame, Iida sobbed, but to no avail. He kept yelling, frantically attempting to get his classmates' attention, but it wasn't working. How can I get through to them? A symbolic light bulb illuminated when Iida saw Uraraka close by. Uraraka, please use your quirk on me, Iida said. She tapped her friend's outstretched hand and watched him float up, complying without hesitation. I have to capture their interest in a way that is both elegant and motivating. That's how you represent UA. Iida then screamed at the stunned audience after colliding headlong with the wall. Everyone, only the press was responsible for the breach. There's no need to panic. Since we are UA students, we have an obligation to behave appropriately for our school. Fortunately, the raging mob was subdued by his words, allowing the evacuation to proceed in a composed and systematic manner. That is, until Iida fell directly on top of Bakugo after Uraraka let go of her quirk. Aizawa continued, Class Rep and Deputy Rep, you need to fill the rest of the positions. So we need a secretary, a treasurer, and a historian, Izuku, the representative, said as he and Yaoyorozu stood at the front of the class holding a list of officers. Do any of you want to? According to Kaminari, what do they do? Oh, I'm sorry. The secretary, records attendance and important information for the entire class. Sighing, Kaminari said, so basically all the hard stuff. Class finances and activities are overseen by the treasurer, such as gatherings and educational excursions. It's mostly for general studies and the business and support courses, Aizawa continued before any of the students could even make excited faces. That type of time is not available to us. With a trembling laugh, Izuku said, and the historian keeps a record of class activities. They mean take pictures, Aizawa translated. I don't understand Nezu's insistence on holding this position, but... Cries of intent to run immediately filled the classroom, and Izuku hurried to write down everyone's names before declaring, all right, we'll assign positions over the weekend. Do you mind, Aizawa-sensei? Shrugging, the pro-hero said, as long as I have it by Monday. Izuku gave a nod. Oh, also, I think that Iida should replace me as class representative. Iida almost cried out, "What? I don't get it, Midoriya. You were legitimately elected." "Why yay, but in the cafeteria, you were the first one to notice that there wasn't a real threat." If Nezu hadn't shown him the enormous hole in the fence, Aizawa would have laughed at that statement. "To be honest, I can't say there wasn't one. And you succeeded in capturing everyone's interest. To be honest, I'm too shy to take charge and I'm not very good at public speaking or anything else." Nearly comical in their unity, the majority of the class nodded in agreement. "But that's what you're good at, therefore, you ought to be in charge of us." After a brief period of silence, Iida swiftly claimed Izuku's hand and gave it a firm shake, saying, "Midoriya, your words move my heart. I will accept this position, but only if you support me as deputy representative. Your intellect and decisiveness are still very much needed." "Deal," Izuku said with a smile and a return handshake. All Yaoyuzu could do was perspire. "I feel like I've been forgotten." He cleared his throat. "Now that you've decided to make me redo a stack of forms, how about we take a short quiz while I catch up?" Everyone in the class moaned. Ashido screamed frantically, "Midori, quick, take it back, take it back." In a display of genuine sadism, Aizawa simply laughed and said, "There are no take-backs in my class. Now you have an essay to write. 1 page for every piece of paperwork." "Is that 1 page front and back, Aizawa-sensei?" Iida asked, holding up his hand. Even present Mike had to cover his ears due to the roars and screams coming from the class that day. That evening Izuku clenched his teeth as the sand at Dagoba Beach moved slightly beneath the faint shockwaves coming from his outstretched leg. With his eyes squeezed shut, he was in a lunge position, feeling the glow of One for All in his right leg carefully fluctuate under his mental control. As though it were a mantra, Izuku told himself, "Remember how it felt. 3%. He opened his eyes to confirm his satisfaction and exclaimed, "Sharingan. Damn it, so close, too." After turning off both quirks, he sat down to catch his breath. He had been using One for All in place of training for the past few days by switching to regular exercise. He had undoubtedly improved, but he was still generally overshooting. Sometimes he lost focus and it shot back up, even when he was certain he was on the right track. "I'm sure the range is totally fine, but precision is everything." He was grumbling and shaking his head. "It's like learning to move a brand new limb that constantly wants to go up. I need to get it down perfect or I'll never be able to catch up to everyone else." Izuku stood up and focused One for All in his right arm, bringing the energy flood down again into a more controllable wave. "There's no chance that the egg in the microwave will break." He checked his work after opening his eyes. Did it get brighter? This went on for a while before someone finally said, "Yes, that's it." After the initial success, Izuku was obviously unable to replicate the outcome exactly, but by the time the sun set, he had at least once charged 3% of One for All in each of his limbs. "I suppose I should go home for the time being since I can't really test its strength in public. We'll have something special for basic training anyhow, according to Aizawa-sensei. They must want our first week to be a memorable one." Izuku took it slow tonight, enjoying the cool spring air and the final few sips of water in his bottle, even though the long walk home had long since turned into a cool-down jog. While the support company was repairing his official face mask, he made a quick stop at the sporting goods store to purchase a new, all-black one, and then proceeded with his journey. He went to the big recycling bin outside his apartment building and tossed the bottle, but he was startled when he heard something coming from the blue container. OWW. It was so silent that it might as well have been a whisper. Izuku, however, was positive that he had heard a cry. Izuku crept up to the bin, one foot pointing out in case he had to run. Hello? Is someone in there?" he asked. It seemed as though his heart pounded loudly against his ribs. "Hello?" Izuku cracked open the lid and peered inside since there was no answer. But all he saw were cardboard boxes, bottles, and what appeared to be a filthy mop. "Oh. I had no idea those could be recycled." Izuku scratched his head and closed the lid, saying, "I could have sworn." The following morning, apparently for their special battle training session, Class 1A had changed into their hero costumes and assembled outside the UA building in what appeared to be a parking lot. Kaminari put his hands on his head and moaned, "Man, I don't like being in suspense about all this." She grinned, "It must be something good though, otherwise we wouldn't be missing all our normal classes for this." Sato deadpanned, "Also, do you want to keep listening to Present Mike Sensei do the monologue from Hamlet, Kaminari?" The trio trembled as they recalled the ear-splittingly awful performance of the classic text, which was interspersed with present Mike's sporadic transitions from casual conversation to his recognizable screeching. Izuku had just pulled up on the other side of the parking lot, having added some of the equipment from his official costume that hadn't been destroyed in the battle trial 2 days earlier to his gym uniform. "Everyone, line up in number order and please enter the bus in a single file line," Iida yelled as the bus came around. Naturally, there was no set seating arrangement on the bus, so to Iida's dismay, everyone sat essentially wherever they pleased. With red cheeks, Iida moaned, to think it was this kind of bus, so uncool. Izuku heard a statement that chilled him to the bone while he was giggling over his friend's humiliation. "Midoriya, your quirk reminds me of All Might." Izuku exclaimed, "W-wa? Asui, there's no way," and my eyes changed color, as his eyes widened comically. Asui sighed. "Ribbit. Call me Sue, and I'm just saying that your strength is reminiscent of his. Although your quirk seems worse because you injure yourself. Or perhaps you just have a weak body." That made Bakugo giggle. At Izuku's defense, Kirishima said, "It's still awesome to have a flashy quirk like that. Mine makes me look all spiky and scary, and it doesn't do a lot of cool stuff." Izuku nodded his head. "And no way, Kirishima. Your quirk is crazy strong, plus, you have a lot of potential as a combat hero. You're like the tank character in a video game." "So I'm like Donkey Kong from Super Smash Bros. That's pretty manly," Kirishima grinned as he clenched his fist. Izuku gave a sheepish laugh. "You are Bowser, with that hair and that hard exterior." Kaminari jerked his thumb at Bakugo and continued, "Besides, what's good about having a flashy quirk if you're a bad person? Like this guy." "The hell do you mean, Pikachu?" Kaminari was just grinning. "See what I mean? It's not even been a week and we all know your personality's worse than a manure farm's smell." While nodding, Tsuyu said, "He does seem more villainous than heroic. Ribbit. I will fry you up and feed you to that French fuck." In the back of the bus, Aoyama shook his head quickly and said, "Non, merci." "WHO said you had a choice?" Izuku nervously scratched his head. "I feel uncomfortably satisfied that they are mocking Kachan." The students marveled at the various landscapes and scenery in the indoor facility after they arrived at the enormous domed complex and Aizawa unwrapped a still-writhing Bakugo from the clutches of his scarf. "It is comparable to a theme park, however, which one?" "Welcome to USJ, that one, also known as the Unforeseen Simulation Joint. My name is," the speaker said as she walked up to the group by the entrance, making broad gestures past the staircase that led down to the main plaza and the paths to the various zones. 13. The sight of the pro hero in the spacesuit made both Izuku and Uraraka fangirl. I know what I said." 13 rubbed his head and laughed, saying, "I'm the space hero. 13. It's nice to meet you all. Actually, the reason you're all here is because I specialize in rescue operations." Aizawa went up to the space hero and said, "Where is All Might, 13? 13 held out 3 fingers and cleared his throat, whispering something that Izuku could not hear but understood. "All Might is out of time. You see, most pro heroes rarely, if at all, fight villains," 13 went on to say in his lecture. "Most hero work consists of rescue operations. But they are also far more resilient than mere combat. Similar to Black Hole, my quirk." 13 held out a finger to the class, and Uraraka's eyes glowed as she recognized the name of the quirk. "Is very helpful for clearing disaster sites and absorbing debris. But someone could be killed by it with ease. Many of you must be in similar situations." Izuku glanced at his fist. "I've been training for that. However, we're going to practice this today. Each of you will have to travel to a different disaster area and try to use your quirks to solve the problem in a hero-worthy way. In other words, there is no collateral damage." From the plaza below, a chilly voice said, "Speaking of collateral damage." Izuku couldn't resist going to look, almost fainting at the sight of over 30 villains, all entering through some sort of purple and black portal, led by a lanky man with light blue hair, hands covering his face, and black clothes. Aizawa instantly tensed and stood guard at the top of the stairs. Shocked by the unexpected invasion, 13 stumbled, "Senpai, what is the strategy?" "I'll deal with this on my own," Aizawa said, clenching his teeth. "Keep the students safe. We're being attacked." Aizawa's gaze hardened beneath his goggles, and his jaw tensed. "How did these evildoers manage to evade our security measures? Does that purple haze originate from a teleportation quirk of some kind? However, our communications array should be able to handle even that." "Kaminari, can you get a signal out? Try and contact UA or the police," Aizawa said. "On it," Kaminari replied, broadcasting a signal with his antennae. 13 stated that All Might was currently out of time. Were they aware of that? The man with the hands, however, was discussing collateral damage. Does that imply he is not after us? Sharingan. Izuku stumbled at the ever-increasing horde of villains, counting to 45. And in the various zones, I see a lot of life signs. Aizawa-sensei. Get back, Midoriya. Not now, the expert grunted. Izuku kept going. I can see a lot of life signs spread around the disaster sites. There's not supposed to be anybody besides us, right? If that purple guy actually has a warp quirk and they bothered to include villains in every zone, then Aizawa snarled. No, there's not. 13, there are villains in the disaster zones. I bet the teleportation user's going to try to separate us so we're easy targets. But to have these many villains, they certainly can't be more than Class D, maybe save for those 3. 13 nodded, and anyone could tell he was referring to the warp quirk user, the lanky man with the hands on his hands, and a huge creature with a beak, an exposed cranium, and gouges all over its black skin without even having to point to anything. Sensei, we should run. There are too many of them, and your quirk, Izuku yelled at Aizawa. With an almost sly smile, Eraserhead said, you can't become a pro hero by only having one gimmick. The villains who took the initiative to ascend the front stairs were then charged by Aizawa. As he attempted to fire the guns in his fingertips and discovered they were ineffective, one villain exclaimed, "Huh? Running into battle by himself. What an idiot, what the F?" An impressive spray of blood was created when Aizawa elbowed him in the nose. Then he grabbed the neck of another villain and yanked him into one of his colleagues, sending them both collapsing down the stairs. Using a few calculated twists of his scarf, he managed to trap 3 more villains in its hold, removing them with a swift tug of the fabric that slammed them all together. Class 1A marveled as their teacher defeated a small army of evildoers by herself. Izuku kept a close eye on things, tracking Eraserhead's movements with his Sharingan. The leader of the villains was scratching his neck in frustration and said, these damn pros. Small fry NPCs can't hope to stand against a mini-boss like this. And the final boss is nowhere in sight. Now assuming his physical form in a well-tailored 3-piece suit without a jacket, the purple smoke being said, that one, Tamura Shigaraki, is Eraserhead. One of the more obscure pro-heroes. The scratching accelerated. I remember. He can erase non-heteromorphic quirks, so he's a gimmick boss. No problem. I brought my action replay. The big black birdman growled just in time, as though he were about to leap. As he laughed, the air seemed to get colder. Not yet, Nomu. Let Kurogiri have some fun, first. Kurogiri, you know what to do? Shigaraki continued. Of course, sir. Hello, future heroes. Could anyone tell me where All Might is? Kurogiri said, disappearing from the plaza and then resurfacing at the front door, essentially sandwiching the students in a swirl of dark mist. Everyone, get behind me, Kaminari, any progress? Yelled 13. There's some sort of interference. Like another signal that cancels mine out as soon as I release it, the electric man said, shaking his head. There must be someone with a quirk like that hidden in the disaster zones. Iida, we need you to run and get help. Iida nodded his head. But 13 sensei, running is dishonorable, it would be best to stay and help fight the. Yaoyorozu intervened. Iida, as class rep, it's your job to watch our well-being. And right now, the best thing you can do is to get help. After giving it some thought, the speedster nodded and hurried to the doors. Kurogiri said, not so fast, boy. Can't have you running off, can we? But he was quick to respond. In front of Iida, he unlocked a portal that led directly back to 13. Iida, go again and don't stop for anything. I'll keep him off of you. Black hole. The rescue hero snarled and held out a finger. After waiting until Iida was safely out of reach, 13's fingertip dropped, exposing a black abyss that violently drew everything in. This also applied to the Mistman, whose gaseous form was swiftly drawn in. Izuku gazed in wonder until he caught a glimpse of a metallic sheen inside the purple man's body. Under his quirk's unique eyesight, he saw that it was glowing, much like a human body, as he looked with the Sharingan. His actual body must be that. We can go after it. What a powerful quirk. Shame it's squandered on someone with no battle aptitude, snarled Kurogiri, and suddenly a tiny portal formed behind 13. But it never fully formed because Kurogiri was struck hard in the body at that precise moment, sending him flying. How come? Who? Izuku was going to open a portal behind 13, most likely to cause Black Hole to backfire, but as he hit the ground, The faint glow of 3% one for all faded from his fist. There's a metal neck plate on him. That's his real body. Fortunately, 3% and the Sharingan are quicker than that. With a cheer, Uraraka said, Deku, nice work. Oh, in fact, that was quite appropriate. Iida was currently forcing the doors of USJ open, as Yaoyorozu said with a smile, and that bought time for Iida to get away. Kurogiri was furious if colored gas could emote, but his face was primarily colored gas. Backhanded. Bye kid? He quickly twisted Iida away from the door to 13 and said, I commend you on your students, 13-sensei. But I'm going to get serious now. The gloved hand went out, but this time the 4 main fingertips opened up, creating a violent maelstrom. 13 laughed, funny. I was going to say the same thing. Kurogiri was dragged back toward danger in an instant. But the teleporter wasn't finished. In an instant, he opened a portal beneath 13. When gravity took over, the space hero plummeted through. Izuku's blood ran cold, asking, where'd he go? The portal's speed had completely changed. There's only one way to find an astronaut. Look to the stars, Kurogiri said with a sadistic laugh. Then 13, whose exit portal had opened from far above the ground, slammed into the concrete, shattering his dome and severely damaging his suit. The hero's body was barely moving from his own breathing, and he was unconscious. Sorry if that surprised you, but if it helps, he wasn't even awake to feel pain. My quick teleportation tends to be a bit jarring. You monster! Uraraka exclaimed as she turned to face the Mistman, feeling a fire ignite in her heart at the sight of her favorite hero being defeated. Iida tightened his jaw. This wouldn't have occurred if he hadn't been so focused on buying me time. Goddamn my weakness. The fact that Bakugo and Kirishima charged the villain with rock-hard fists and explosions suggests that they shared a similar level of rage. But the pupils simply disappeared from view as the Purple Man opened 2 hazy portals in front of them. Then, a number of portals opened around the students, drawing almost all of them inside. Don't worry about your friends. You really ought to worry about yourself first. Izuku was enveloped in the black mist and experienced a strange feeling of floating. But then he was pulled forward by a pair of hands. We're glad we didn't lose you, huh? Kaminari said, wiping his brow after saving his friend. Man, that was a close one. Izuku realized something just as he was about to thank him. Kaminari. I think everyone else lost us. Water trickled down Jiro's head as she surfaced, panting heavily. What on earth? Where am I? She had no time to orient herself because a villain that resembled a shark emerged from the water with sharp teeth ready to attack. I didn't come here to kill kids, but who am I to choose? The villain said. Jiro's body froze in disbelief as her eyes grew wide. I am immobile. She didn't have to, though, because Asui leapt out of the water and gave the shark villain a terrible kick to the gills, which caused him to convulse and lose consciousness. Asui stuck out her tongue and dragged the punk girl along with her, carrying them both to the deck of a big yacht in the middle of the ocean. Jiro, grab on. With a sigh of relief, Jiro coughed up whatever water had gotten into her lungs and said, Phew, thanks, Asui. Call me Sue. Jiro blushed at the lack of formality, saying, Oh, okay, T-Sue. Oh thank God. I'm going to die surrounded by women. Then, for an entirely different reason, Jiro's face flushed. Oh great, we're stuck with the pervert. I'm so happy you're a Tsunere. Mineta began to cry. Let's focus on escaping. Ribbit. Suyu slapped him with her tongue. The Fogman was looking for All Might. I suppose that means they came to kill or capture him. Ribbit. After Suyu's deduction, Jiro was extremely uneasy and said, wait. They came to kill All Might? Are they stupid? Suyu, please tell me you're kidding. Mineta was crying now. Only my friends can call me Sue, and I generally just say what's on my mind. Then we're gonna die. The villains were amused by the short child's near hysterical behavior. I guess that just makes them easy pickings, said one of them, a hideous-looking skeleton in black armor, grinning. Looks like Ua isn't as tough as they want you to believe. He raised his hand, revealing a water-based claw. Suyu and Jiro were still working on a plan on the yacht. Ribbit. I assume that everyone else is dispersed throughout the other areas because we are in the flood zone. We should try to locate the others and reassemble if at all possible. But how can we get out? Jiro scratched her head. You'd be much slower with me, but you're the only one who can outrun them in the water. And me? Mineta wept, tears welling up in her eyes. How can we at least hold the villains back long enough to escape? Jiro asked without even acknowledging him. I need your boot, but I have an idea. Suyu simply gave him another slap and said, Ribbit. They went around the boat in circles. With just one of you, I might be able to get ahead of the bad guys. I could then return and retrieve the other. Although it would be dangerous, it is our best option. Jiro, give me your boot. Mini pervert, stop talking, right now, we have no time for your shit. However, I have a thought. I don't want to hear your half-baked attempt to see us naked, you ignorant F. The boat sank as a huge claw of water tore through it at that precise moment. What's the strategy? Mineta was given one of Jiro's boots. Normally, sound waves fade out quickly in air because air is compressible, but water isn't, he said, taking the speaker out of the boot right away and then removing the grill to reveal the subwoofer underneath. Thus, the villains would become incapacitated as the sound waves from Jiro's boots propagated throughout the water. Ribbit. Suyu tilted her head, truly surprised. That's pretty smart, Mineta. Mineta proudly puffed his chest and said, I must touch Yayorozu's breasts before I die. I must simply continue to live until then. Jiro replaced her now plain boot and plugged in her speaker, resisting the urge to toss the micro-perv into the water. So I just need to create a massive sound wave underneath the water. Not too difficult. If it's too strong, you'll liquefy their internal organs. Suyu continued, too weak and it'll be like a jacuzzi. With a gulp, Jiro nodded and plugged in her speaker. All right. Let's get this done. Even as far as weaker villains go, you're all on the low end of things, Todoroki said, letting his breath out in a chilly mist. The villains in front of him were rendered completely immobile by the ice encasing their bodies, and could only stutter and moan in response. What the devil? As the chill crept into his bones, one of the villains stumbled and said, the second we showed you up, this kid. Shigaraki assured the pupils that it would be simple, he's be better than most professionals. As Todoroki turned to go, he heard a villain emerge from behind him and say, kid, never let your guard down, not even for. Learn your own advice, the villain said, but he was never able to finish because Todoroki quickly pushed him down with a palm strike that left ice all over his body and cemented him to the ground. Hyperthermia will set in a few minutes. I'd prefer not to kill you, but I'm sure I could get away with it. In a tantalizing reprieve for the villains, Todoroki said icily, his left side steaming slightly. So, tell me why you're here. The last one he froze instantly broke, saying, we're here to kill All Might. Todoroki said, I wanted a serious answer, not, almost laughing. He's not kidding. Shigaraki possesses a weapon of some kind that can kill him, sincerely. Although the villains' desperate voices were undoubtedly sincere, Todoroki's uneasiness could not be resolved by any amount of openness. Kill All Might? Bakugo was having a great time blasting villains in the ruins zone, and the only other student he came across was probably the only one he didn't have to worry about getting hurt in the crossfire. Will you, stupid hare, aim for the throat? Picking up your slack is getting old to me? Before headbutting a villain in the nose, Kirishima shook his head and threw a punch, saying, Bakugo, don't kill them. That isn't manly. Did anyone mention killing? Bakugo growled back as he wrapped both hands around a rock villain and fired explosions simultaneously, now die. Between the attacks of the two most aggressive students, it didn't take long for all the bad guys to pass out. We should find the others and reorganize, right? As he gritted his teeth and gazed at the vanquished villains, Bakugo remarked, that fog bastard said they were looking for All Might, probably to kill him. Laughing, Kirishima said, like that's an actual problem. Hair for brains, shut up, if they weren't serious, they wouldn't be here. After giving it some thought, the redhead said, I suppose you're right, but what can we do about that? It's not as if we can truly defeat anything that is as strong as All Might. With a twisted smile, the explosive teenager gritted his teeth and said, oh, we can. You will be my meat shield, and I will be number one. I'm excited and scared at the same time, but let's do it, Kirishima said, scratching his head. Fortunately, or unfortunately for Bakugo, they encountered no opposition as they exploded out of the building and moved from the ruins zone to the central plaza. Until they finally reached their destination, that is, holy fuck. 10 minutes earlier sadly, Aizawa wasn't much better, and he growled as the final villain collapsed, totally depleted by the pro. I need to rehydrate, but I haven't removed that prick with the hands or bird brawling yet. His eyes were bloodshot and red, as he had described, but not because of his quirk. My eyes are practically screaming. Without even changing his gait to avoid stepping on his fallen comrades, Shigaraki laughed as he walked up to Eraserhead, saying, dude, Eraser. I know we're on different sides, but you're just so cool. This guy hasn't done anything, but he looks completely confident. He knows my quirk and he just saw me beat his goons, so why is he approaching me like I'm the one in trouble? The latter gritted his teeth and prepared his scarf defensively. Instead of waiting to find out, Aizawa charged the leader of the villains and aimed an elbow at his face. The villain moved at lightning speed and managed to firmly seize the appendage despite the blow. Eraserhead, you're slowing down, and your quirk's weakening. Aizawa roared as the skin on his elbow began to deteriorate, exposing the muscles underneath. I'll have to use my quirk and disable him as quickly as possible because he's fast, possibly even faster than me at full strength. Aizawa pulled back and applied pressure to the wound while closely observing his opponent. Shigaraki Tsked, are you going to remove my quirk? Can you help me, Nomu? When Izuku threw one punch and hit with the wrong knuckles, almost breaking his hand, it became clear that he was not a fighter. Alright, not a good start. Just get this over with and find the others. He, Yaoyorozu, and Kaminari seemed to be stuck in the mountain zone with a sizable gang of bad guys. How are you holding up, Midoriya? His fellow deputy representative called as she used a bow staff to easily defeat villains. 3% Detroit Smash. Izuku said in his head, I'm fine, as he used a right cross to knock out a villain, this time only using the first two knuckles. Kaminari. As he fled from a small group of attackers, the electric type cried out, I'm not fine. I'm not feeling well at all. Even with the Sharingan, I'm having trouble dealing with these many villains. It's no wonder she got in through recommendations. Yaoyorozu moaned and moved to assist him. Izuku practically marveled at how easily she fought back her opponents, the tomo of his quirk spinning rapidly as they followed her movements. Kid, you really need to listen. Izuku jolted out of his reverie just in time to be sent reeling by a masked villain's punch. Are you alright, Midoriya? Pulling his friend up, Kaminari said. Yeah, I'm fine, Izuku said, wiping some of the blood from his mouth, only slightly dazed. Beside them, Yaoyorozu said, this isn't good. Both literally and metaphorically, we are pressed up against a wall. Can't you remotely turn off your electricity, Kaminari? I'm sorry, but once it leaves my body, I can't control the flow, he said, shaking his head. I'd probably shock you guys too if I discharge. I doubt I'll be of much assistance. Izuku had an idea that suddenly came to him. Could you create a conductive scarf similar to Aizawa-sensei's, Yaoyorozu? I see, she said with a smirk of realization. I won't take long to do that. Midoriya, can you keep them away from us? Izuku nodded, his body tingling with adrenaline. You got it. He took hold of Yaoyorozu's bow and began shoving villains away, doing his best to mimic the moves he saw. Because of One for All, Izuku was able to charge his leading arm and bring the staff down on a villain's helmet, shattering it and instantly knocking the person underneath. My wrists aren't as flexible as hers, though. Damn it, I'm almost out of time with the Sharingan. Izuku's eye twitched then. Yaoyorozu saved the day, saying, Midoriya, it's done. With a small smile on her face, she exchanged the scarf for her staff and said, make sure you wrap it around skin. She was holding a bundle of coppery cloth. Izuku charged his power and nodded. I can't move as quickly as Aizawa-sensei, but the basic idea is the same. Use my left hand to hold the scarf loosely, wrap it with my right, return it to Kaminari, concentrate on my legs, and... Izuku took off, using the 3% speed boost to trace his own movements to Aizawa's. He swiftly wrapped his Sharingan around his opponent's bare arms, ankles, or necks, really, anywhere he could find, while dodging and weaving under the villain's blows. Come on, kid. With a stone-covered fist, the final villain charged Izuku. If I sweep the legs, he's going for a haymaker. Izuku's supercharged leg muscles easily knocked the villain's footing out from under him, allowing him to faceplane and wrap the scarf around his neck. The final piece of fabric was then thrown to Kaminari by Izuku, who exclaimed, that fabric is a conductor. Put everything on your arm. The latter's face lit up with realization, and he smiled, saying, now this is what I expect from my student council. Grab this. Through his arm, Kaminari directed electricity that passed through the copper in the scarf and through each of the other 7 villains, effectively tasing them all at once. Izuku fell to the ground, laughing in spite of his fatigue, his jaw still ringing from the blow he had received, his legs hurting from going over his limit by accident, and his eyes stinging from pushing the now deactivated Sharingan. But he'd just defeated villains, damn it. Dude, Midoriya. The scarf move was a wise choice. That was really awesome. Kaminari gave a compliment. That was a pretty good strategy to think up on the fly, said Yaoyorozu, nodding and assisting the greenette in standing up. But what were your thoughts on that? With a sheepish laugh, Izuku said, I kind of stole from Aizawa-sensei. In relation to that, shouldn't we return? Yaoyorozu nodded and said, the only way down is to rappel, pointing to the plaza where there was undoubtedly some fighting. I'll need about a minute to make the equipment. Kaminari exclaimed, dude, when 13 Sensei designed this place, couldn't he have included an elevator or something? Izuku laughed, but was startled by a roar that didn't sound human. That came from the plaza. Izuku said, I'm unable to zoom in because the Sharingan has timed out and I can't see it from here. I am able to create binoculars, only a minute will pass. No time. Izuku gritted his teeth. With my quirk, I should be able to climb this cliff. Alright, Kaminari smiled, let's go, lead on, he said, leaping onto Midoriya's back. I intended for you to follow me while I went alone. Well, I see, said Yaoyorozu, rubbing her chin. Then, she threw her arms around Midoriya's neck. Go, Midoriya. The girl he was carrying bridal style was dressed as conservatively as debut Midnight, so it took an unsurmountable amount of willpower to keep his eyes up as he leapt down the mountain zone, but Izuku's face was flushed. How do neither of them find this strange? After landing safely, Midoriya gave himself a hug and said, I can't ever become a groom, I. Yaoyorozu tapped his shoulder and got a shriek in return. Midoriya, we should be heading out. Just don't touch or look at me for a while, he whispered. I'll be alright. Then there was a snap like a gunshot that echoed through USJ, followed by a roar of pain, and the three of them dropped their stomachs as they hurried to the plaza where the sound came from. Aizawa's body appeared battered and broken, his arms were crookedly bent at right angles, his face was practically gushing blood, and the big birdman was holding his head and squeezing it like a balloon about to burst. When Shigaraki saw the pro hero, he laughed and said, Dude, Eraserhead, I can't believe you're still alive. The villain surveyed the plaza, which was strewn with the unconscious bodies of his friends and, far back, a few, lucky, heroes. You're really something else. Holy shit, Kaminari said, blushing. At the moment, Aizawa-sensei is in it bad. What should we do? With a bead of sweat revealing the fear she felt at her teacher's danger, Yaoyorozu gritted her teeth. Any brilliant ideas, Midoriya? He nodded. All I can think of is to sneak around behind them and attack them while they're looking at us. Are they? Yaoyorozu looked at the villains and sharply inhaled, they are. Almost trembling, Kaminari said, we must leave, right now. In an attempt to avoid drawing any more attention, they gradually withdrew, but it was too late. Excellent. I'm able to finish a few levels before the last boss. Shigaraki ran frantically after the pupils and yelled angrily. In a panic, Kaminari shouted, 1.3 million volts of indiscriminate shock. Fortunately, Izuku and Yaoyorozu were able to jump out of range as he cupped his hands together and unleashed a blinding stream of lightning at the ground, shattering the plaza's tile as electricity flowed towards Shigaraki. But by leaping with unexpected force, the villain leader was able to completely avoid the surge, flying over the teenagers and landing behind them. Dude, that's a powerful quirk. I assume you will grant a great deal of experience. First to speak, Momo said, the pros are probably already en route, while Izuku prepared one for all and the two formed a new staff. There is no way you can get away. Give up now. Izuku swallowed. This guy looks like a psychopath. I wish I had that confidence. So Kurogiri didn't succeed. Shigaraki scratched his neck and said, that makes me mad. He stopped to laugh when he realized what was happening. Big words, but you're shaking like a rumblepunk. How about I assist you in stopping? With his pale hand extended toward her face, he charged Yaoyorozu. However, Izuku was so frightened that he rushed to his fellow deputy representative and threw out his fist, saying, Detroit smash. Izuku hit his target, sending a shockwave through the stadium. He briefly believed that he had saved the day, but as soon as he realized that his target was not 10 feet tall, had neither black skin nor a muscular build, his euphoria was quickly replaced by horror. This child really annoys me. Look after him, Nomu. As Nomu grasped it with its enormous fingers, Izuku felt an excruciating pain in his right arm. The same arm he had used to punch him, and it threw the green hero to be a good 50 feet, causing a painful landing and a severely broken forearm. Midoriya. Kaminari, exclaimed Yaoyorozu, we must. Kaminari's face was the epitome of derp, as he gave everyone he saw a thumbs up repeatedly. At the sight, Shigaraki chuckled, not very bright. Nomu, take care of the child first. I detest heroes, he growled in the final line, his raging fury threatening to kill. Izuku channeled One for All and was able to jump partially out of the way, but the force of Nomu punching the ground where he used to be, pulverizing the tiles, knocked him back. Nomu screeched in response and took off, disappearing in a burst of wind. This is insane. He's almost as fast as All Might. I have to buy Kaminari and Yaoyorozu some time to get away, no time to wait. Izuku flicked his right hand and used his left arm to raise his fractured forearm, saying, Delaware Smash. Nomu was knocked back several feet by a blast of air, which also left a small indentation on its skin that soon filled out again. This thing tanked 100%? All Might's power? And it can heal quickly? Izuku gripped his broken thumb and middle finger, sliding his elbow pad down to his hand to serve as a sort of protective glove. It appears that we have unlocked a secret boss, Shigaraki said, tilting his head. That move's name, those heroics, pushing my Nomu back. It seems like you were made to annoy me. Wei. Kaminari, drooling a little, ran into Shigaraki. After Izuku and this new distraction, the villain boss turned to the fried blonde and said, You're annoying. He casually put a hand out to the latter's throat, but he forgot a crucial detail. Hey. Shigaraki crumpled to the ground, the hand covering his face falling off as his long blue hair took over, obscuring it. Yaoyorozu cried out as she cracked her staff across Shigaraki's face with enough force to shatter it. She grabbed Kaminari right away and ran for the exit stairs, saying, Midoriya, the leader's down. When the Nomu heard this, it turned to face Shigaraki's unconscious body and screamed, ignoring Izuku and heading in his direction. Izuku used his good arm to gently pull Aizawa onto his shoulders, taking care of his broken arms, and ran as fast as 3% permitted. I apologize for the rough ride, Sensei, but I can't leave you back there. Is it going to help him? This is my chance. By the entrance, Kurogiri was growing weary of the other students' constant attacks. He was avoiding acid, tape, and the anti-gravity fingertips, and the boy with the multiple limbs would not give him a chance to get away. I still haven't recovered from 13's attack or used my special move, so now that they've discovered my weakness, I have to concentrate on using portals to reroute and avoid their attacks. Kurogiri, however, stubbornly guarded the door to keep Iida from finding an opening for more than a second, preventing the students from either fleeing or joining the fight. In addition, the students themselves were growing impatient as their attempts to escape were thwarted by a strategically placed portal. Have you found anyone, Shoji? As she missed the metal neckplate by a hair for the umpteenth time, Uraraka cried out. The teenager in the mask shook his head and said, I haven't been able to concentrate. When the mist man slipped through his webbed limbs, he attempted to envelop him but was unable to adequately secure the main body. To all of you, Shoji brightened and said, I found someone. As she sprayed concentrated acid to block Kurogiri's route to his leader, Mina perspired and said, We all heard that, genius. To Uraraka's envious dismay, Yaoyorozu emerged from the stairs, barely exhausted from the lengthy ascent, accompanied by a laughing Kaminari. Growling, Kurogiri said, Those villains were even poorer than we thought. Without realizing it, he moved in the direction of the new danger, prepared to fight. This is my chance. Iida rushed for the door, which Kurogiri had just left ajar, ignoring his relief at seeing more classmates. What? Kurogiri reached out with a portal, fully intending to use it to bisect this particularly annoying student, but felt his real body become weightless as Iida sped past him and attempted to shimmy his way through the door he left cracked open from his previous attempt. Kurogiri cried out as Iida. Go now, Iida. Iida eventually made it through and flew at full speed in the direction of the main campus, while Uraraka sobbed as she pushed the villain high. Nomu and his master reappeared, and the teleporter took a moment to recover. 2 quick portals and constant fighting. I don't have much left in me. I have to report this. That's game over. Kurogiri warped using his special, extra-fast portal while the students distracted themselves. Then he saw his boss in unconscious form. Apparently, he doesn't either. Shigaraki. Shigaraki Tamura. Could you wake him up, Nomu? The fallen young adult began to stir, but the hulking beast didn't even acknowledge the presence of his master's right-hand man. Critical hit. Shigaraki rubbed his face, but took a moment to recoil in shock. Father? Shigaraki panicked as he looked at the ground and saw the hand that had covered his face lying there. Father, he said, replacing the mask, but his breathing was expressive enough to show how angry he was. Kurogiri went pale, or at least paled in his own way. Shigaraki, don't do anything hasty right now. The experts will arrive shortly. Shigaraki began frantically scratching his neck, saying, Kurogiri, everything is going to go haywire. Despite my plan, nothing has worked. He glared at the tall girl who knocked father off, then at the hero heading to the stairs, obviously nursing his right arm while carrying Eraserhead on his left shoulder, and at those students, the annoying brats who had ruined his almost ideal plan. Kurogiri reasoned, Tamura Shigaraki, we should escape while we still can. However, his argument was ignored. Stop that hero brat, Nomu. I would like to play with him further. Hey, can you help me? I don't really want to drag him up all these stairs, Izuku exclaimed to his classmates on top of the stairs. He's already in it pretty badly. I'm on it, said Sato, grimacing as he looked down at their broken teacher. I need your assistance to stop the bleeding and secure his arms, Zero. With Zero's quirk, the two were able to secure Aizawa onto his enormous frame after running down the stairs. You want me to tape up your arm, Midoriya? It looks awful. It's all right, Izuku said, shaking his head. The pain is less severe now. However, the adrenaline will probably cause that to stop. Tell me about it, said Sato, laughing. The Sugarman's eyes widened and he started to choke on his words. I feel like once this stops I won't be able to mow. Zero seized up too. Izuku arched an eyebrow, but when he felt a hand grab the back of his gym uniform, he realized. Deku. Uraraka sobbed as Nomu threw Izuku back into the plaza, where he landed painfully. Then, with a single blow, Nomu destroyed the staircase, which Sato and Zero barely avoided by leaping and hauling themselves back up to the entrance, respectively. If we all attack it in a coordinated effort, we'll be able to defeat it, Yaoyorozu responded as she stood defensively in front of her classmates, brandishing her third staff as Nomu roared and flexed its massive arms in a menacing manner. This is bad. Until Ida returns, we'll be on our own without Aizawa-sensei or 13-sensei. Bakugo, Todoroki, and Kirishima are likely the most combat-ready of us, but they haven't returned yet. Nomu must have heard Izuku's groan as he sat up and nursed the shoulder he had rolled onto because it instantly leapt back to the central plaza and gazed down at the wounded student. I can't defeat this monster, but if I don't, it will attack the others, so I must at least stall it until the professionals arrive. This is terrible that it is aiming at me. Here's an example. Delaware Smash. When an air bullet sped toward the massive beast's head and knocked it back a few meters, Izuku bit his lip in agony and flicked his right index finger at the Nomu, but the beast did not strike back. From the side, Shigaraki walked confidently and slowly, saying, that attack. You're an All Might fanboy, right? Because that annoys me. With his fingers outstretched, he ran straight for Izuku. I must also stay away from him because if he touches me, I will die. Sharingan. Izuku moved as quickly as he could, even charging 3% of 1 for all in his legs to give him a speed burst, despite the searing pain he was experiencing from forcing his quirk to activate. You have a very high speed stat. I detest that. Shigaraki only managed to catch a small piece of cloth over Izuku's chest before it swiftly deteriorated. Whoa. Quicker. 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 5%. Izuku glared at the boss, trying his hardest to keep track of Shigaraki's movements as he pushed the boundaries of what his body could sustain and was able to comfortably keep up with him. Oh, you're quicker. And your eyes. How intense they are. I'm furious now. Shigaraki jumped back from Izuku by roughly 20 feet. This is my opportunity. 5% Detroit Smash. Izuku leapt forward, prepared to knock his opponent out. I can see where he was hit before, so if I hit him there, he'll most likely faint. Regretfully, Izuku never even reached that point. Nomu suddenly materialized and slammed the former into the ground, almost breaking his ribs in the process. Oh my! Izuku coughed up blood, his ribcage pressing against his already sore lungs as the beast's strong hand crushed his torso against the sharp debris, stars obscuring most of his vision and pain blinding the rest. Nomu glared at Izuku, as though he were about to leap. Izuku couldn't help but reflect on the significant events in his life, realizing that it was obviously coming to an end. The day he first watched the video of All Might rescuing everyone from the building that had collapsed. When he discovered that he was quirkless, his mother simply expressed regret to him. When their initial victim managed to get away, Kachan and his friends beat him up. In a matter of hours after meeting All Might, he was reprimanded by All Might and then commended by All Might. He was informed by the recovery girl that he possessed a quirk. Joining Ua, reaching Kachan at last. I have so much more to do, off, he said, ignoring the excruciating pain in his right arm as he clawed at the hand on his chest. Nomu couldn't make out the pained gasping, so he looked at Izuku almost quizzically. Izuku's eyes seemed to burn, but so did the rest of his body. T.F.F.M. The glowing red in his victim's eyes and the two tomo spinning so quickly that they seemed to form a solid black ring around his pupils hypnotized Nomu, whose simple mind was unable to resist. "Why can't you ever save yourself, you damn nerd?" was a loud sound that came like a bang. Bakugo blasted his way in and hit Nomu's back with a powerful blast, causing the beast to release his hold in shock. "Leave me alone," Izuku hissed at last, and as his eyes screamed in agony and he heard a ringing sound, Nomu obeyed by taking his hand away from Izuku while still kneeling over him. "What are you doing, Nomu?" To no avail, Shigaraki screamed in panic. Yet more startlingly, two tomo surrounded the pupil in Nomu's normally blank eyes, which were now glowing red. What the fuck? Izuku couldn't make a fist, so he focused one for all into his palm, just like he did against Bakugo, but with full power. He had a mission, so he didn't let himself think about it. He had to stop him now. If he fights All Might. If he fights the others. I need to stop him now. Izuku's right hand was engulfed in green lightning, which crackled so fiercely that the ground beneath it collapsed. "Take this." With a roar, Izuku pressed his hand to Nomu's head, exerting all of his strength. A Nomu screech and a bright flash were followed by a thud as the latter was flung back, a huge piece of his head missing while the rest crackled with green lightning. With an amazing sense of lightness, Izuku laughed as he gazed at the fallen monster before collapsing backward. The villains were certainly at a loss for words, as were Bakugo, the students at the top of the entrance, who were struggling to find a way to help, Yaoyorozu, and Shiro, who had rappelled down to help with the inevitable injuries that would result. Midoriya. Kirishima broke the silence in the compound by charging towards his fallen classmate, propping his unconscious body up. "Christ, your hand." After gathering themselves, Shiro and Yaoyorozu also ran over, with the latter already preparing antiseptic and bandages to treat the greenette. "That blast. When did you catch up like that?" Bakugo was staring uncontrollably. "Oh no. Dear God." Shigaraki clawed at his neck until blood drew at the side of his Nomu. The head wound was taking its sweet time to regenerate, and even then, it was unclear if Nomu would have the stamina to fight anymore. "My anti-symbol of peace, defeated by a child?" "That kid," Tamura said, glancing at the unconscious boy who was now wearing new gauze over his bloody hand. Before he knew it, Shigaraki was on his way to Midoriya, his murderous intent clearly visible. If it weren't for a massive ice wall, he also came very close and might have been able to destroy his target. Todoroki pulled his right hand back, mist evaporating from his fingertips, deadpanned, "And I was worried you might be able to kill All Might. The big one is meant to be the weapon, but he's down, and the only other person down is Midoriya. How did he do this?" Bakugo was able to gather himself and point his remaining gauntlet at Shigaraki, leaving him without time for another tirade. "You know, I didn't get to show off since Deku destroyed the other one, but take this, perish." The ice wall broke under the sheer force of the blast, and Shigaraki flew back towards Kurogiri as he pulled the pin on the gauntlet, causing a huge explosion that obscured both sides from one another and filled the air with the pungent stench of smoke. Shining red burns dotted Shigaraki's body as he moaned, Kurogiri." Through the smoke, the warp man said, "Tamura, I'm here. Now is the time for us to depart." The boss nodded but said nothing. "Should I get Nomu back?" Kurogiri enlarged his body into a portal that Tamura could pass through. Shigaraki nodded once more, saying, "That brat's attack totally outstripped his shock absorption, but he's still healing, so he's not dead. He probably wouldn't be able to battle All Might right now." "Don't worry, Shigaraki," Kurogiri said, calling forth another portal beneath the almost regenerated Nomu. "This is just the start." They vanished at the same time as the smoke, and it just so happened that the other villains began to awaken at the same time. "Hey, what took place?" "Shigaraki has left. The big guy is doing well, too. However, the students are still present, so they defeated the boss? Nor is All Might present. Let's kill them, who cares? We'll kill All Might after that." A voice erupted in rage and said, "I wouldn't be so sure about that." Later on in the evening, Izuku woke up startled, his heart pounding as he looked around frantically for Shigaraki and his beast. "Where am I?" He glanced at the curtains surrounding him, the white walls, and the white floor. Izuku turned to the speaker and saw All Might sitting next to his bed in his slender form. "You're in the nurse's office, young Midoriya." "All Might." Are you all right? How about the rest of you? 13-sensei? Aizawa-sensei? Izuku started to perspire. Your classmates are all fine, All Might said, laughing at the irony of his protege's worry. In fact, a large number of them remain here, awaiting their families to come and collect them. I got there just after you fainted and vanquished the other bad guys. As for your teachers, I'm afraid Aizawa and 13 are both in the ICU, the pro said, his face taking on a slightly darker appearance. Although they're not in the best of health, they should recover. Although, for that matter, neither are you. Izuku almost freaked out when he saw how many bandages were wrapped around his right arm and torso. I look like a mummy. What happened to me? All Might cleared his throat and grabbed a clipboard. Recovery girl had to go check on your teachers at the real hospital, but she healed your broken ribs and arm as well as replacing the skin on your hand. She said you might have some hairline fractures left, but healing those might drain your stamina. You have small tears in your leg muscles. Probably from when I overdid it with One for All when I tied the villains up, Izuku sighed. And your hand is permanently scarred, but other than that, you're fine. After a brief period of silence, the teacher and student exclaimed, "Wait, what?" Like his mentor, Izuku sucked in his breath at the sight and tore the bandages off his right hand. His fingers were a little off-center, and his right hand had 2 scars running down the palm. The skin appeared somewhat pink as well, but that was to be expected since it had basically grown back. The symbol of peace was looking down. I'm so sorry, young Midoriya. If I was quicker. If I was there today to begin with. This is my fault. We were just lucky that young Shiro and Yaoyorozu were able to stop the bleeding. Izuku nodded. It's not your fault, All Might. I did this to myself, even after Aizawa-sensei told me not to. Well, at least there's no damage to its function, and I heard that girls like scars. All Might gulped, feeling ecstatic inside that his student had no animosity toward him. Izuku was just saying, I guess that's the price for not mastering One for All. Oh, but I was able to control 3%, and I did do something really cool with it. What's that? Izuku reached for his hand. I couldn't make a fist so I concentrated it into my palm and then it started sparking like crazy. And when I hit the Nomu, everything exploded. Then he sighed, wait. What about the Nomu? And the villain boss? All Might nodded. We didn't get them. They left with that warp quirk guy. All we got from the captured villains were their names. Tamura Shigaraki and Kurogiri. He placed his hand on his chin. But you concentrated One for All into essentially your skin to produce explosive power while preserving your bones. That's actually kinda ingenious. Huh, really? The Mighty replied, yeah. Breaking your bones might cause longer lasting damage, but skin is a bit easier to heal, especially with Recovery Girl. Although, I doubt that it's anywhere near as powerful as the punch you used against the zero-pointer. Izuku gave a nod, yay. And I haven't trained enough to regulate where I focus One for All, so my control is pretty bad. Well, with the Sharingan, you were able to control 3% after only a few days, so learning that shouldn't be too hard. Oh, one more thing. The voice of All Might said, Jesus, kid. I can't take many more surprises for today. I looked at Nomu for a moment with the Sharingan and I don't know. It was like I could control him, you know? Like I could just insert whatever I wanted into his mind and he'd do it. You get what I'm saying, All Might. Scary. All Might was trembling, but that sounds familiar. All Might. Well, maybe it's another ability of the Sharingan. You know how you activated it? The hero said, clearing his throat. I just really wanted him to get off of me. Then I looked at him in the eye and he just got off of me. It sounds like a dangerous power. The ability to control others through eye contact. I'll speak to Recovery Girl about it, but I don't think you should use it too often. Lots of ethical quandaries with a power like that. He cleared his throat. Anyways, that's enough serious talk for now. It's late and I'm sure your mother is worried about you. Your classmates certainly are. All Might made sure Izuku's bandages were still tied tightly and carefully assisted him into a brand new UA jacket. Many of his classmates were still waiting to be taken home when he led Izuku back outside Class 1A. This is where I must leave you. I'm afraid I can't maintain my muscle form any longer. With a nod, Izuku said, thanks, All Might, for everything. Despite appearing surprised, the pro grinned and said, of course, Midoriya, my boy. Enjoy the weekend as much as you can. With a nod, Midoriya slipped into the classroom, almost leaping to the ceiling in shock. Kirishima practically yelled, hey, Midoriya's back, as he rushed to his friend. Midoriya. Glad to see you in good health. Iida grinned relievingly as he saluted his fellow class officer. Kaminari was twitching. Hey, Midoriya. Sorry for the T-twitch. Happens after I overdo it. From behind, Jiro simply laughed and said, Hey, Midoriya. I heard you were, way, cool. To her delight, Kaminari blushed and said, that's not funny, JJGG. He was unable to pronounce her name. Yaoyorozu grinned and said, Midoriya, good to see that you're mostly recovered. The outpouring of well wishes caused Izuku to blush a little. Oh. Yaoyorozu, I heard you and Shiro gave me first aid. Thank you. Izuku kneeled. It was nothing. You helped me earlier with the villain boss. Although, she sighed, dismissing him. I feel like I should apologize. Huh. What for? It's just that. I thought you were too shy and awkward and, well, jumpy to be a hero. Izuku gave a sheepish laugh, she and all the others. To Izuku's embarrassment, she bowed deeply and said, but you were the most decisive out of all of us today. I guess I just want to apologize for judging you harshly and thank you for teaching me I still have a ways to go. And no, I'm definitely super shy and weird and awkward, you don't have to apologize at all. I should be apologizing, he replied with a bow. She bowed even more quickly, saying, No, I insist that I was wrong. I'm sorry you feel the need to feel sorry. After a while, even Iida muttered, this seems excessive. The only thing Kirishima said was, from you, that's ironic. Azu exploded through the door at that precise moment, the only thing that could have prevented the bowing battle. Mom, my ribs. As Kurogiri bandaged his head wound, Shigaraki Tamura snarled, beaten by low-level NPCs. This is humiliating. Patience, Shigaraki. Your victory will come in time, Kurogiri said in a conciliatory tone. A deep, rich voice came from the television. Listen to Kurogiri, Tamura. Today's battle may have been lost, but the war is far from over. It's only just begun, and today you laid the foundation for their defeat. But, Sensei, I didn't even get to the final boss. Nomu was defeated before then. The strong voice let out a sigh. Well, that's unfortunate, but at least you recovered him. Losing a Nomu this powerful would have been a tremendous waste. And now, I can make him even stronger than before. But Nomu was beaten by someone so tiny. Was it really a mini-boss? Shigaraki moaned as the antiseptic burned away at his wound. This boy that defeated him, what was his quirk? Some sort of enhancement quirk. Incredibly powerful, but it caused him damage at full power from what I saw. Kurogiri went on to say, although the attack that injured Nomu was interesting, it was more electricity than brute force. The electricity. What color was it? Kurogiri said, It was green, maybe? With an intangible eyebrow raise. Laughing, the voice said, yellow to blue to green, funny. Sensei. Never mind me, Tamura. Just an old man's musings. Anyways, we merely underestimated these students, but it won't happen again, yes? Never. Shigaraki snarled, I'll never forget those damned eyes again. Eyes? What eyes? Even later that evening. With his trash bag in hand, Izuku walked slowly down the stairs of his apartment building. The Midoriyas ate katsudon and sobbed after returning home, after his mother had almost filled Ua with her tears. They then sobbed more and consumed more katsudon. They occasionally did both simultaneously. In any case, Inko fainted from fatigue, anxiety, dehydration, or probably a mix of the three. Letting Izuku do the cleaning, which he enjoyed. Izuku walked over to the dumpster, tossed the bag over the metal walls, and stopped to grin at a job well done, only to be interrupted by a whining, OWW. His skin turned white, and his hair stood up straight. Once more, he listened carefully and asked, is someone there? But heard nothing. This time, I'm positive I heard it, but just to be sure, Sharingan. Izuku looked for signs of life in the dumpster. A child, some rats, a few bugs, and more rats, what the hell? Izuku approached the dumpster quite closely. It's unquestionably a human. It's a kid. She trembles as she says, I know you're in there. In response to a little gasp, Izuku said, you should come out and go home. Your parents are probably worried. He could see the child's glowing form through his tense Sharingan. Since there was no answer, Izuku let out a sigh, turned off his Sharingan, and, using his left arm for obvious reasons, hauled himself up and over the dumpster's edge. Fantastic. I have to clean my shoes now. With the exception of a dirty mop, He couldn't find anything where the child should be. Yesterday, wasn't that in the recycling? Izuku rummaged through the mop, which was actually hair. The voice did indeed come from a child. A little girl with a big horn and red eyes that were teary. Izuku was beaming. There you are. You should really go home. It's super late. As if to find solace in the camouflage it offered, she tried to move back in the dirt while staring at him in terror without answering. What on earth? He held out his right hand in a gesture of goodwill, saying, Hey, it's okay. I want to help you. I'm a student at UA. My name's Izuku, what's yours? Did they get you too? She asked, widening her eyes at his arm without initially saying anything. What does she mean by, too? Izuku tilted his head, asking, they? Who's they? The girl pointed to her arms, which were similarly, albeit shoddily, bandaged. That is no longer hygienic. How did this girl end up? Izuku cupped her cheek with his own, all-might, smile, saying, hey, it's okay. I'm going to be a hero. I'll protect you if you're scared. The girl initially appeared to avert her gaze, but she eventually leaned into his hand while crying. Hey, I'm sorry. I didn't want to scare you. When he attempted to pull his hand back, she gasped and reflexively took it, putting it back on her cheek. The corner of her lips pulled slightly outward, but she didn't smile. Let's try this again. My name's Izuku. What's yours? Izuku said with another smile, this time as sincere as he could. Still holding his hand to her face as though in fear of his disappearance, she whispered, Eri. He said with a grin, it's nice to meet you, Eri. I promise, it's all gonna be okay now. Wanna know why? Why? Because I am here. With her eyes bright and her lips pulling as high as she appeared to be able to, she gave him a questioning glance before nodding. Izuku, she said. It's probably time for us to leave the trash, Mom. Mom. Inko moaned wearily, barely taking her eyes off the couch. Wah. With both arms raised, Izuku said, I found a kid in the dumpster. That's impossible. Japan's strict on abortion. Izuku continued, setting Eri down. Can we keep here for tonight? I can take her to the police station in the morning to find her family. Izuku was overcome with admiration for his mother's exhausted candor. Sure thing, baby. Just brush your teeth, Inko said, waving him away. Sighing, Izuku said, yes, Mom. My room's right there. Izuku guided Eri to the hallway that led to the bathrooms and bedrooms. With her free hand firmly grasping his recently malformed right hand, she pointed to his door and said, it says Izuku. As she had predicted, his name was printed on the All Might decorative sign. Well, I sorta wanted some more All Might stuff for my room, Izuku said, blushing a little. Is it strange that I still have all this stuff even after I became his successor? In addition to being cute, Aries yawned emitted a poisonous odor that even caused Inko to shift in the adjacent room. He led her to the bathroom and gave her a towel from under the cabinet, saying, I'll find some clothes for you so wash up. Okay. Izuku gripped his nose and said, I forgot you've been in a dumpster for the last couple days. Come on, you need a bath. Okay. Eri, you need to let go of my hand to take a bath. She seemed to be unaware of this, saying, what? But. The child's eyes welled with tears, and her lip began to tremble as the hand gripping Izuku's only tightened. I don't want to let go, she said. Izuku knelt down to pat the head of his temporary ward after feeling a wave of protective instinct. It's okay, Eri. We don't have to let go if you don't want to. Stupid. Why would you say that? She should have a bath. And most likely apply hydrogen peroxide to her mouth. But what should I do now? The response was that Izuku needed to bathe her. Izuku began bathing the child in a tub full of bubbles, his face red in the process. Bubbles are fun for kids, right? Correct. Scrubbing the dirt and grime from young Eri's hair required a lot of work, but it was worthwhile to see her hair's brilliant white instead of the dingy gray he mistook for a used mop. Her horn was yellow-brown, and beneath the layer of dirt she accumulated while hiding outside, her skin was peach in color. However, she was reluctant to take off the soiled bandages covering her arms. Eri, it's okay. I need to clean your arms, but I can't do that if these are on. I promise, I'll replace them with fresh, clean ones, okay? She averted her gaze but eventually gave in with a small nod, keeping her arms out of the frothing water. Izuku unwrapped her arms slowly, almost throwing up when he noticed the numerous scratches and scars that dotted both forearms, resembling incision lines. Who, what, and how did she end up Izuku kept his feelings and opinions to himself because he was afraid of upsetting or frightening her. Much better. Thanks, Eri, he said, forcing a smile instead, then threw away the dirty rags and went on. He dried her off after giving her a bath, being especially careful with her arms, which she wished to conceal beneath the bubbles that swam on top of the water. Izuku glanced at the smock she had on earlier and said, "Okay. Now to find something for you to wear. That is not acceptable. I should probably burn it first. I have no idea where mom stores my old clothes, but perhaps." Izuku quickly dressed the girl in an all-might shirt after picking her up and swaddling her in the towel before carrying her to his room. Goddammit, it was adorable, even though it was Izuku's size and fit over her like a dress. Whispering, "Izuku. My arms." She concealed her arms in the enormous sleeves. He attempted to leave her, but she apparently had other ideas, so he ended up carrying her to the kitchen, where he was able to pry her away long enough to retrieve the bandages from the medicine cabinet. Oh, right. Be right back. Did the doctor get you, too?" she whispered as he wrapped the immaculate white cloth around her arms once more. "The doctor? What do you mean?" Izuku asked, giving her a questioning glance. "Do you have scars, too?" she asked, gesturing to the bandages covering his right arm. "So this is what a doctor did to her? Was her family aware? Have they done it?" Izuku laughed sheepishly and said, no, I sorta did this to myself." "How?" Well, I have a powerful quirk, but it hurts me to use it at full power." "Why do you use it then?" she asked, her tiny hands tracing the folds and creases of the bandages around Izuku's arm. If your quirk hurts, why do you use it?" she whispered, moving out of his line of sight. After giving it some thought, Izuku smiled slightly and said, "Because I want to control it." The girl suddenly turned to face him and said, "Huh?" He replied, "If I can control it, then I could save a lot more people, right? And the only way to get better at using it is to practice. Even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. But what if it hurts other people?" Izuku stopped talking after that. Eri had a conflicted look on her face, as though Izuku's words were making her angry. "Eri," he said quietly, "does your quirk hurt others?" She looked at him, gasping, but nodded when she saw the sympathetic expression in his eyes. Talking down to her is pointless. With a slight grin, Izuku said, "You know, my quirk could hurt people really badly, too." Really? Today, I had to fight a lot of villains. If I wasn't careful, I could have really hurt them, maybe even kill them." Her eyes were wide with recognition and wonder. "Did you, kill anyone?" she asked. He nodded. "No, because I've practiced and practiced and practiced. Sure, I still hurt myself, but that'll change, too." Eri yawned, and Izuku became acutely aware that it was almost 2 in the morning. She looked down thoughtfully, but her lip corners tugged upward in what Izuku recognized as her version of a smile. "Practice," she said. He carried the young child to his room and laid her on the bed, saying, "Come on, let's get some sleep." He pointed to his desk chair and said, "You can sleep here tonight. I'll be right here." Eri gave a nod, but he held onto his hand. "Do you want me to hold your hand while you sleep?" Izuku sighed, but he smiled at the adorable gesture. Izuku pulled his chair next to his bed and tried to settle in while still holding the child in his left hand after she nodded once more. Izuku. Yeah. What is it? Can I hold your right hand instead?" she asked, turning her head away from him and flushed a little. "You sure? It's kinda crooked now." Izuku arched an eyebrow. "Jesus, I'm never going to get used to that." With a head shake, Eri said, "I like it better, it matches." The cuteness made his heart tighten, so he gave in and turned his chair 180 degrees to exchange hands. The following morning with a sigh, Inko looked at the time. Izuku is late at 10 a.m. He usually leaves to work out by 5 o'clock. But perhaps he's simply worn out from yesterday. Recalling the phone call she received from Ua outlining the attack at the USJ facility and her son's injuries, the mother almost started crying. "Perhaps I should just see how he's doing. Check to see how he's doing." She went out into the kitchen and opened Izuku's door. He didn't even sleep in his bed, geez. And when he wakes up, that angle is going to kill his neck. With a gentle shake, Mama Midoriya said, "Come on, kiddo. Time to get up. I've got breakfast." Izuku opened his bleary eyes and stirred. Mom?" he asked, straightening out, which caused his mother to grimace sympathetically and give him a nasty crack on the neck. "Weary," he said. "What time is it?" "Little past 10. I know that's late for you, so I didn't want you to completely ruin your sleep schedule. Izuku yawned and extended his left arm while nodding. There's a lot of food whenever you're ready. I have plenty so your friend can have some, too, Inko said with a smile before stealthily leaving the room. Izuku gave a nod, and his mother left the room. After 3 seconds, Inko rushed back into the room and yelled, "WWW what?" A small child wearing one of Izuku's All Might novelty shirts was curled up in his lap, clutching his right hand tightly. Sputtering, Inko said, "H-ho. W-wa." Izuku raised an eyebrow and looked down, saying, "Huh, she moved. I'm not sure why I was forced to sleep in the chair at that time." Inko squeaked, "Why do you have a toddler? Huh? Remember I told you about her last night? I found her in the dumpster and brought her inside? Well, I guess it can't be helped. After you both wash up, come get some breakfast. We can talk about it then." Inko vaguely recalled some sort of disturbance after she fell asleep, but it's obvious that her son's words didn't register at the time. "Good morning, Eri. Sleep well," Izuku said, nodding and glancing down at the child who was just beginning to wake up. She nodded and rubbed her eyes while giving a cute yawn. Her eyes suddenly opened, and she leapt to the ground in a panic, scanning the room as though she was looking for something. "Wah? Eri, are you okay?" She kept looking at every little detail before abruptly stopping, tears in her eyes, and whimpering, I thought it was a dream." "Ah, Eri." Izuku knelt down and put his arms around the girl in a protective manner. The girl grabbed his shirt in a panic and buried her face in his chest in return. After a while of holding hands, she released her hold, which Izuku interpreted as a sign that she was all right. She nodded slowly, almost reluctantly, as he withdrew and wiped her face. "I'm not going anywhere, I promise." Taking her hand with the broken one, Izuku laughed and said, "Are you hungry? My mom's a really good cook." Before escorting her to the dining room, he led her to the bathroom to clean up after interpreting the rumbling sound coming from her stomach as, yes. Inko kept a close eye on her son as he sat the young girl to his right, still clinging to her. "So, what's your name, sweetie?" she asked, trying to hide her bewilderment with a reassuring smile. The child turned to face Izuku, seemingly requesting permission before speaking, and only after he nodded with a reassuring smile, did she say, "Eri." Her voice was quiet and gentle. "Eri. That's a very pretty name." The young girl nodded as her cheeks began to flush a little. "Not a big talker. I'm fortunate to have worked with children like that." "Well, Eri, where are you from?" The girl answered slowly, "Underground." Is your house underground? That's interesting. Do you know the address? Where can we take you?" No, I don't want to go back to Kai, please," she whimpered as her eyes snapped open and she frantically grabbed Izuku's sleeve. The sudden panic caused Inko's eyes to widen, but she nodded and smiled reassuringly as Izuku gently stroked the young girl's back and said, "It's okay, sweetie. You can stay here for as long as you like." The child seemed to calm down a lot as a result, and she settled down, but she continued to cling to Izuku as if he were her lifeline. "I should introduce myself, huh? My name's Inko. I'm Izuku's mom. It's really nice to meet you, Eri." Eri uttered the name as though to test its pronunciation, Inko. The words, "Eri, what are you hungry for?" made Izuku smile. "What do you mean?" she asked, giving him a questioning glance. I mean, what do you want to eat?" "Why, you mean I can choose?" she said, her mouth wide open and her eyes sparkling. "Of course, sweetie. We have bacon, eggs, rice, fruit, muffins." Inko wanted to laugh at the naive expression, but she suspected Eri's lack of experience was a little morbid. "Fruit?" The elderly woman grinned. "That's something. Sure, we have bananas and oranges and apples. If you don't like those, we can go buy something you like." "Apples?" Eri's mind evoked a dim memory of a dark-spotted, red globe. Its flavor was amazing, but the inside was yellow-brown and a little mushy. To the amusement of the girl's caregivers, drool began to pour from her mouth. Inko swiftly cut an apple into even wedges from the fruit bowl and presented them to the girl on a plate. Izuku grinned eagerly, hoping the child would find something enjoyable. Eri jabbed her fork into the fruit. It was so shiny on the outside. Its flesh was bright red, with no brown patches. Even though the sheen indicated high moisture, the inside was quite firm and more white than the darker color she remembered. It tasted even better than she had remembered. Her face brightened as she bit into the fruit, and she whispered, her voice a little muffled by the food, "Sweet." Izuku's face also brightened, and he told his mother, well, she likes apples a lot. That's good. Despite her smile, Inko asked her child in a whisper, what happened? Where did you find her? Izuku told how he discovered the child hiding the previous evening while using his quirk, saying, I think she's hiding from her parents or something. You think they gave her those scars, too? Inko asked, nodding thoughtfully, appreciating that the child was contentedly eating her breakfast rather than listening to the conversation. He replied, based on how she panicked when we offered to take her back, yay. Thing is, she never mentioned a mom or dad. Only someone called, doctor. I guess we should call the police first and have them handle this. For all we know, she was kidnapped and her real family's looking for her. Oh no. That never even occurred to me. Nevertheless, I feel bad about abandoning her. I need to make a call. Izuku said as he got up. Huh? Who? Inko asked, startled by the abrupt declaration. Poor, impatient Izuku was baffled by the question. Just a friend, he exclaimed, running away before his mother could react. He then hid in his room and quickly dialed one of the 2 numbers he had committed to memory. Hello? Rang after a few rings. Izuku growled, All Might. I have a problem. All Might was on the other end of the line, holding the phone away from his ear while his student began to babble. Young Midoriya, I can't understand you. Talk slower. Sorry. I found a kid hiding out in a dumpster by my house and I think she was abused or something cause she has these scars on her arm, but that's not the point. Everybody might have perspired. Why is he rambling and speaking slowly? Anyways, my mom and I tried to find out where she's from, but she's completely terrified to go back to wherever she's from and I was wondering if you knew what I should do. Following a brief period of reflection, the symbol of peace said, well, procedure in cases like this is to place the child into the care of the police. They can take the investigation from there. Why yeah, but she's sorta. He was interrupted by a faint knock on Izuku's door and a shy but anxious voice asking, Izuku? Eri, whoa. He said, hi, Eri. What's up? As he opened the door. Her eyes began to sparkle, and the teenager felt a wave of guilt as she fiddled with the hem of her dress, t-shirt, saying, you were gone. I thought you left. Reaching for his right hand, she raised her left. Oh, Eri, I'm sorry. I just had a call. In return, he drew her into the room and sat her down on the bed with him as he concluded his conversation. She earned another heart clench by leaning against him. She's too much. Damn it. You All Might? The person on the other line chuckled softly. I heard everything. No worries, she sounds cute. She is, yeah. But I don't know if I could leave her, Izuku said, laughing uneasily. Young Midoriya, I assure you, the police are the best people to handle this situation. And no, I mean, she might not let me go. The conversation stopped for a moment. It's not uncommon for kidnapped or abused children to fixate on their rescuers. In that case, separating her from you might be detrimental. Can you list some of her features? I'll have a friend on the force look into it first. Oh, sure. Name's Eri. She's about 5 or 6, I think. White hair, light skin, red eyes. A horn on the right side of her head. About 1 meter tall or so. Got it. I'll have him look for any matching description. In the meantime, bring her to me and Recovery Girl. We're at the Hero Ward at Musutafu General. I'll meet you in the lobby. Eri was clinging to Izuku's arm like a lifeline during the hour-long train ride to the hospital after he assured his mother that he was taking him to a reputable specialist and that they were going somewhere safe. Small Might welcomed the two as soon as they entered the hospital. Yo, young Midoriya. He glanced at the young child who was holding his protege's arm tightly and said, and you must be young Eri. Hello. Before noticing the shirt she was wearing as a dress. Adorable but otaku. Still holding Izuku in both hands, she bowed shyly to the man. I get the impression that's not because she's particularly brave, though, because All Might grinned and said, At least she didn't scream. Most children tend to do that when I'm in this form. Here, come with me. Recovery Girl's still treating Aizawa and 13, so we'll need to go inside the specialty ward. The lights behind the floor buttons were activated when All Might flashed a card, which Izuku recognized as his hero license, in front of a sensor. The hero ward's locked to the public, so you need a license or a provisional license to enter. Or you can get special permission from the front desk or another hero, All Might said as he led the two minors through a special set of elevator doors. Why are you here? He asked them as they got off on the 4th floor and walked down a spotless white hallway into a spacious room with multiple beds but only one person. Aizawa-sensei. Why you look. Well, Izuku said, pale, but that was a lie. From head to toe, the erasure hero was wrapped in bandages, with a cast particularly fastened to his arms. What gives him consciousness? Again, why are you here? This is for heroes only. And why do you have a kid? And why are you in that form in front of a student? He said, squinting the hero's eyes from the tiny holes left open by the white cloth. Izuku began to perspire. That's a large number of questions with intricate responses. All might be able to respond. Yes, if he didn't come up with something, he wouldn't have taken us to Aizawa. He gazed expectantly at his mentor. Shit. I assumed he was sleeping. Could it be that young Midoriya has an idea? He's intelligent. He gazed expectantly at his pupil. Both of them thought the same thing. Oh no. Your arms. Did the doctor get you too? The three men turned to face the small child, who was observing Aizawa with interest. Eri to the rescue. In their minds, the one for all users gave the child praise. The doctor bandaged them up, but a villain broke them. Why? The wounded hero said, squinting his eyes but nodding. With her right arm extended, she replied quietly, we match. You didn't answer my question. Explain you how. The hero's gaze softened a little but hardened as he returned his focus to the other men. Recovery Girl said, now. Shota, how many times do I need to tell you to be nicer to people? Besides, Midoriya over there saved your life, from what I understand. You ought to be nicer. She shook her head and lowered the cane she had just used to rape Aizawa. You broke your arm again. Aizawa simply sighed. Learn to control your Kiao. What did I just say? Honestly, so callous, this one. Izuku made the error of laughing, which led to his own rap. Why are you laughing, young man? He's right, you know. Your injuries were nothing to scoff at. You're lucky to still have all your ribs. Scary. Why yes, ma'am. Smiling down at the child concealed behind Izuku's leg, Recovery Girl cleared her throat and said, hello, young woman. My name's Recovery Girl. What's yours? Eri. Well, Eri, I'd like to run some tests on you, is that okay? Said the elderly woman with a smile. She looked at her guardian, a little scared, and her hold on Izuku tightened. He simply said, it's okay. Recovery Girl is one of the best heroes around. She fixed me up after I got hurt and I'm just fine. The youthful heroine rushed to give the genuinely youthful Izuku a grandmother kiss, enveloping his right arm and torso in green light. Ooh, speaking of which. To the amusement of the taller man, Eri gasped and momentarily released his grip, retreating behind All Might. Well, I suppose she prefers me to Aizawa, hee. As the final hairline fractures set and the pain subsided, Izuku sighed and said, thank you, that's a lot better. With a wave, Recovery Girl said, the best way you can thank me is by learning to control that quirk of yours. Are you okay? Eri asked, glancing fearfully at Izuku. Yeah. Recovery Girl's quirk heals people, he said, grinning at her and extending his slightly less crooked hand. I'm all better now. She just wants to help you, too. With a nod, the child swiftly reattached herself to Izuku. Recovery Girl led him and All Might to another examination room after he led her behind. When the young girl nodded and started the physical, Recovery Girl grinned broadly and said, now, just sit up here and I can examine you. Does that sound okay? Meanwhile, All Might and Izuku exchanged words. I think you were right to be wary of leaving her, young Midoriya. She's clearly very attached to you. What should we do? Did your contact find anything? All Might nodded. No missing child report matching that description. For that matter, he says he didn't find any child period that matched her description. Wait, are you saying that she doesn't exist? Izuku said, his blood freezing. The more senior protagonist raised his eyebrows. Legally, at least so far as we know, this is the first we've heard of her. Recovery Girl's blood test might reveal something, but we'll have to wait for that. Have you found anything else about her? Something noteworthy? She has some scars all across her arms. They look kind of like incisions, Izuku said, tapping his chin. Jesus. The news made All Might a little queasy. Violence against children has consistently made him sick throughout his career as a professional, or annoy him. And she seemed worried that her quirk is dangerous, like, she said it hurts people. In terms of abduction, it's not uncommon for children to be kidnapped because they manifest powerful quirks, but that's usually after it's been documented by a researcher or doctor. In her case, we have nothing to go on. Izuku was a little anxious about leaving the girl alone, so he asked, what should we do if she doesn't have any known relatives? All Might sighed and rubbed his head, saying, normally, the police would take custody of her until they could find her closest relative. Eri had fallen asleep on a relaxant when Recovery Girl interrupted, saying, that might be a problem. With a start, the one for all users said, She was almost unnervingly quiet when I said, I finished analyzing her blood sample. Her sex chromosomes don't match any known karyotypes on record. Her parents don't exist either. The expression on All Might's face was horrifying. That's impossible. 3 people don't just not exist. The physician nodded. I have the sneaking suspicion this child has a less than legal background. It's probably better to consider her a foster child rather than a missing one. I doubt any good would come from trying to match this girl with her relatives. All right, the pro said, nodding, I'll give Tsukachi a call. He can take Eri to a foster home while I do that. Sighing, Recovery Girl said, or, you just leave her with Midoriya. Well? Izuku cried out. Well? All Might shouted loudly. The elderly woman clarified, she was staring at Midoriya the whole time I was doing her physical. The fact that she has attached herself to him after only 1 day is essentially a miracle, as she probably suffers from a variety of social disorders. Attempting to keep them apart could hinder her chances of getting better. All Might said, rubbing his chin reflectively, I'm sure Tsukachi could locate the necessary documentation to register your mother as a foster parent, but would she mind? Oh, yeah, Izuku said, nodding. She would adore her presence. Still, it would be wise to inquire. You would then have to get notarized. Are there any lawyers you know well? Friends or family? Compared to waiting for a judge at a courthouse, it would be quicker. My mom's best friend is actually a lawyer, Izuku said with a laugh. With a radiant smile, All Might said, that is wonderful. Who? Izuku then recalled a crucial detail about this particular family friend, and he said, oh no. That night, you've grown so much. Mitsuki Bakugo hugged the boy as she entered the Midoriya household. And Inko. The way you're big has completely changed. Thanks Mitsuki, Inko said with a sheepish laugh as she took her childhood friend's embrace. Thank you for coming out to assist us. Please, what are friends for? The taller woman said, waving it away. Speaking of whom? Oi, Katsuki, she said, sticking her head out the front door. Now get your ass in. Avoid being rude. Shut up, you old hag, said the person outside. Despite the harsh language, Bakugo still obediently entered the house and nodded to the shorter woman, hey, Aunt Inko. His mother punched him in the head right away, saying, what was that? You disrespectful jerk, give a bow to your elders. Avoid fucking me. Despite this, he bowed slightly before glancing at his classmate and squinting. Izuku nervously waved, hey, Kachan. What are you doing here? Mitsuki ruffled her son's hair and said, oh he was so worried about you, I just had to bring him along. She laughed heartily as her son raged, unable to put his intense anger into words, and said, anyway, where's the new kid? The little woman who has become so attached to our Izuku is someone I would like to meet. The Bakugos were led by the Midoriyas into the kitchen, where a tense Eri, shielded from the visitors' stares by an apple wedge covering her mouth, hurried to her guardian, hiding behind his leg and holding his right hand. Oh, how cute she is. Hello, dear, Auntie Mitsuki is who I am. A courteous bow was returned when the older blonde waved with a radiant smile. I apologize, Mitsuki, Inko said, laughing at her ward's actions. She simply lacks confidence. Oh, it's nothing, Mitsuki said, waving it off. However, you're smart to take her on. However, I guess it's not much work at all with a child like Izuku. The blonde's face twisted abruptly, and she squeezed her son's cheeks, asking, why did I get stuck with such a brat? Why are you unable to be a good boy and take children off the streets? Shove off you fool. Katsuki roared, stopping abruptly and glaring at Eri. Tisk, whatever. He pushed his mother's hands away and stomped to the couch, complaining. Mitsuki muttered, that's helpful information, and then took a big bunch of papers out of her bag. Anyway, Inko and I have a lot to do, so why don't you three go play or something? Are you sure I can't go play, too? Inko asked, perspiring at the substantial pile of papers. That's absurd. This will only take the whole night with my assistance. But it's Saturday. Izuku sat on the left end of the couch across from Bakugo, while Eri chose to sit near, almost leaning against the former while Mitsuki tried to get her friend excited about adoption papers and her friend almost broke down in tears at the loss of her evening. Katsuki Tsked. Why must you always have this kind of thing happen to you? Surprised, Izuku stumbled. Huh? What are you saying? Bakugo was yelling inside about his incapacity to express his opinions in front of a child. All this weird stuff always happens to your useless as self. Izuku laughed nervously and shrugged. I'm not really sure, I suppose it's just my luck. After simply shaking his head, the other teenager turned to face the young child and asked, why is she holding your hand? To Izuku's glee, Eri gasped and buried her face in his side. She says that we match, he said, because of the bandages. Thank you. This child is so annoying. Your hand looks like shit. But you should have seen Aizawa-sensei, Izuku said with a sheepish laugh. He had a mummy-like appearance. When was Aizawa in your presence? Bakugo's eyes squinted in suspicion. It's technically not a lie, but wow, oh. When I took Eri to get a physical, he was at the hospital, too. Heroes stay in the hero ward, dips. Idiot. Shit. Oh no. Recovery girl gave me special permission. Yes. Why did I say, yeah, at the end? It's much less convincing. When the old heroine was brought up, Eri became excited. Recovery girl. Yes, Eri. Yes, Eri. Do you recall her? The youngster nodded and said, she and Mr. All Might were really nice. You saw All Might? Bakugo said, almost spitting. No, Eri, and no, of course not. But that's what you called the skinny man, Eri said, tilting her head. With the yellow hair. You referred to him as Al. Wow. Izuku said, clamping a hand over the child's mouth. Children, such vivid imaginations. The greenette's tears were not as loud as the sweat streaming down his face. Eri nodded, drooling more loudly than Izuku's perspiration as he whispered into her ear, if you don't say anything else, I'll get you 1,000 apples. It's only been a day and you've already made her weird, Bakugo said, glancing at the other two with suspicion before shaking his head and looking straight ahead. Well done, Deku. Deku? What is a Deku? It's what he is. I thought he was Izuku. He's still a Deku. What is a Deku? You asked me that already. If Izuku hadn't been so concerned that Eri would use the insult, he would have thought the exchange was amusing and somewhat priceless. It's just a nickname, Eri, he said. The kanji for my name can be read in a different way. After giving it some thought, the girl brightened up and said, oh, I understand, can't do anything, is that correct? Izuku went white as Katsuki screamed with laughter, Eri, not you too. Alternatively, is it from Dekiru? She tapped her chin. For that implies, can do anything, instead. Izuku began to nod angrily and cry with relief, while Katsuki simply growled, recalling a round-faced girl, not you too. Izuku dried his tears and said, still, Eri, how do you know kanji so well? Abruptly, she fell silent and muttered, it was one of the books in my room. Room? What room? Bakugo inquired, completely unaware of the current circumstance. It's okay. We don't need to talk about it. Want to do anything else? Izuku said, shaking his head at his childhood friend and pointing to the child's dejected expression. The youngster merely shrugged and muttered, apples? Hey, sure. Want some food? Izuku asked with a smile, and she nodded, much to his delight. With a slight heaviness in his chest, Katsuki turned away and walked sluggishly into the kitchen, where he grabbed the largest and sharpest knife he could find and easily cut up a number of apples. Izuku was astounded by how evenly each apple slice was cut. Wa, Kachan. How'd you slice them up so fast? And so cleanly? He asked. As he gave the girl the stack of apple wedges, Katsuki complained, knives aren't hard, moron. Eat. With the child's face as close to a smile as Izuku had ever seen, they snacked on the fruit to kill time. Actually, it's the first time I've ever seen her smile. Mitsuki and a hilariously exhausted Inko eventually rose from the table at that point, holding a pile of filled-out forms, and said, congrats, Mama Doria, you're a proud parent of two. Inko whispered, trying to force a smile onto her weary face, yay. Izuku grinned and said, hey, that's great, you can stay here now, to Eri. I don't have to go back. What do you mean? Eri asked, glancing from Izuku to Mitsuki and back to Izuku. The older Bakugo chuckled. It means that, legally speaking, Izuku's your brother. And this ball of love is your mom. And that really makes me your auntie. What? That means that Eri said, her eyes glimmering with tears that threatened to burst at any second. Izuku began to cry as well, saying, my sister. Inko also began to cry, saying, my daughter. The three of them were crying so hard that they could have started a tsunami in a split second. Look at that. She already cries like a Midoriya. Mitsuki merely chuckled. PSH. Only plus side is now I get to hear someone call that moron, Deku ni. Katsuki said, rolling his eyes. His chest lightened when he saw the young girl truly smile. Fuck it.
I will continue the story in next part. Till then, bye bye.